Trump vs. Hillary. How different would America be if she had won? Well, the Supreme Court would not be the joke that it's become, and would still have Roe v. Wade. Was it perfect? No. Was it an F-ton better than what we have now? Yes. One thing people haven't mentioned so much about a more liberal Supreme Court is that gerrymandering would have been banned. Supreme Court ruled 5-4 in 2019 in Rucho v. Common Cause that partisan gerrymandering was fine. Just one more liberal justice would have made partisan gerrymandering illegal nationwide. Whether Clinton in 2016 or Gore in 2000, the country could have been very different with more healthcare reform and access expansion, a SCOTUS liberal majority, significant climate policies, as well as a major public health response to COVID, instead of responding with deadly denial, followed by suggesting to shove a light bulb where the sun don't shine or inject some bleach. I don't care if I like the person in charge, but I care very much that they're fully competent to do the job and that they conduct themselves like an adult instead of a vengeful, grifting, criminal child. If Hillary had won, I wouldn't have realized how awful some of my family members and friends were. Truly no morals or values, just pure tribal GOP no matter what. There's lots of people with rose-colored glasses here. The biggest thing is the Supreme Court would be liberal. Everyone's talking about Roe, but flipping Scalia's seat could have meant chipping away at Citizens United. None of the Trump-related decisions that greatly expand presidential power. None of the deregulation decisions. We'd still have Chevron, maybe chip away at Shelby. Donald J. Trump would probably have gone to prison instead of using the presidency to hide from his crimes, and he'd have been prosecuted. Project 2025 would have never left the drawing board. Things would just be better. Her debate with Trump, she had detailed plans, costs, where the money was coming from. I have a Vote Hillary pin still. She wouldn't have been perfect, but definitely better than this. We'd still have serious systemic issues surrounding wealth inequality, but nonetheless significantly better than the reality today. Yep, we in the outside world would probably all still grumble and complain about the US, and those in charge there would probably still just make a bunch of flashy hand waves that never truly affected real change, but we likely wouldn't have had people blatantly trying to create a fascist state, so we'd be winning there. She may not have been world-changing, but she would have been stable and boring, and we'd all be fine. The far right would still be fringe, not an emboldened mainstream audience to target. Right-wing media would have had nothing too crazy to push. Rather than pushing legitimately dangerous ideas popularized by the administration, they'd be focused on the same completely harmless bullcrap as before. Fox would be covering the equivalent of the tan suit and Dijon mustard incident, and pretending they were apocalyptic, because there'd be nothing of true import to scare their viewers. The best part of Obama and Biden is I rarely thought of them or heard from them. Meanwhile, the orangutan in the Oval Office is constantly intruding on all our lives. I can think of two things. First, we would still be in Afghanistan, or we would have left in a considerably different way. And second, Republicans would win the presidency in 2020. It would be a lot easier for swing voters to blame the Dems for the restrictions on personal liberty during COVID if a Democrat were in the White House in 2020. I agree with that second point. Hillary would have been seen as a continuation of the Obama years, similar to HW with Reagan. COVID would have been the decision-maker and handed the Republicans the presidency, maybe even Trump for a rematch. On the plus side, Trump would have been saddled with the inflation aftermath and there probably wouldn't have been a Jan 6. It would have been way better, and I'm not even a Hillary stan. In fact, I very much dislike her, but she would have been much, much, much better. Almost any of the candidates on either side would have been better than Trump. Even Jeb frickin' Bush was our last hope for a semi-sane candidate, until he primaried out to Trump. The dollar wouldn't be devalued 11%, soft power would still exist, tariff taxes wouldn't be hitting us all, cancer research and disease prevention would still exist, science and innovation would still be funded, books and art wouldn't be banned, and there'd be no kidnapping and detention of US citizens underway right now. And that's just the short list. Democrat voters were too busy tearing themselves apart claiming Sanders was cheated and making Clinton out to be an evil human being that was nowhere close to the reality, while Republican voters were coalescing around Trump. Many young voters don't understand the concept of perfect is the enemy of good, and they like to adhere to an ideological purity test, and as a result end up with a result far worse than the alternatives. In the meantime, I've had older Trump voters tell me that they dislike him as a person, but believe the policies he'll enact are far more important than him as a man. This is a far more pragmatic approach to voting than whether you like the person's personality or not. Well, for starters, that guy with the island that both Clinton and Trump were on would have been killed while in prison. Oh, wait. Nothing special. COVID would have ended much more quickly. No January 6th. Some poor people would still have healthcare. America wouldn't be a laughingstock. We'd be, say, 25 trillion in debt instead of 37 trillion. US aid would still exist. We wouldn't be on the verge of recession. HHS wouldn't be run by people who believe in crystals and essential oils as cures for cancer. Roe v. Wade would still exist. Our international trading system wouldn't be a cluster F. There wouldn't be tanks on the streets of DC. We wouldn't have masked secret police pulling people off the streets and into unmarked vans. We'd still be part of the Paris Climate Accord. COVID might literally not have happened under Clinton. Trump cut 2/3 of the US CDC staff in Wuhan before COVID even broke out. Having those extra experts in place might have made the difference in the initial detection and containment, and the virus might not have spread beyond a few people. She would have been impeached for allowing 17 whole people to die during the COVID crisis. I think things would be less different than people think. A lot of people here are being extremely idealistic about how her term would have gone. Relations with Iran, in my opinion, would be the big divergence, as I doubt Hillary would have ordered the strike on the Soleimani. Trump would maintain support after the election of 2016. A lot of people think just because he lost means he'd lose support. Like him or not, no other Republican candidate has been able to get voters behind him the way he has. A lot of people, even conservatives, expected him to lose in 2016. Him losing by such a narrow margin would enable him to stir more support. People are talking about Hillary's response to COVID like it matters for the 2020 election. Here's the truth. The incumbent in 2020 was always likely to lose. COVID happens so close to the election that the positives of whatever she might have enacted wouldn't have yet come to fruition, and the negative effects of COVID, like mask mandates, distancing, economic hits and stuff, are really hard to shrug off. Those are some really easy things for Trump to work off of platforming-wise to rile up support. Trump would win in 2020, meaning he'd be the president in office when the vaccines hit, and he'd likely win in 2024 as the Dems struggle to platform someone. I believe it would possibly be a much slower, more normal progression towards what we're seeing now, but overall what we considered normal pre-2017. Overall, definitely much better. Until we tackle universal gerrymandering laws that fairly represent everyone, until Americans realize social programs help everyone, until monopolies aren't the apex of capitalism, and until corporations aren't people and others I haven't even mentioned, our outlook looks grim regardless of who sits in the seat. But we'd be less far along the line of destruction with someone else in charge. I think we'd probably still be complaining, but with no concept of how bad things could really get. We know now. Millions who are dead today would not have died from COVID. The soldiers who died as a result of the pullout would never have happened because Hillary wouldn't have been stupid enough to free those hostages in the first place. Medicare for all would be here right now, as would free universal community college or trade schools. Power stations for electric vehicles at every rest area on interstates. After 8 years of Hillary and the prosperity gained from having Democrats in control of Congress, our economy would be in the strongest position it's ever been. We'd now have a Democrat president, and Republicans would be struggling to figure out how to gerrymander their states to secure more wins, just as they're doing right now. This take is about as idealistic as it gets. As the few comments before pointed out, we don't tend to notice things going well for us when they're more or less just fine. And unless Clinton completely evades the pandemic somehow, the incumbent party probably is going to have a very tough time there. I'd love for the states to have experienced as much positive change as this last commenter wrote about. I just don't see it happening, even under the best Democratic candidate. We'd have a vastly different Supreme Court and frankly a much more stable regulatory and legal scene due to it. It would also still be unthinkable to purge and dismantle agencies without Congress passing a law to do so. We wouldn't be the laughingstock of the world, we wouldn't be concerned about losing our democracy or about an impending constitutional crisis. Our economy would be stable and the rich wouldn't be getting astronomically richer at the expense of the poor. At least not at the same rate. Fascism, oligarchy, and kleptocracy wouldn't be topics of our daily conversations. The Supreme Court would have been a liberal majority. There wouldn't have been an insurrection and a felonious president. She likely would have been re-elected and wouldn't have been as feckless as Biden. Extreme improvement. Sure, she'd make some missteps, but she wouldn't be kidnapping innocent people, shaving their heads and shipping them off to foreign prisons. She wouldn't build a camp reminiscent of the Third Reich in the Sunshine State and let a puppy-shooting glamazon silicon doll run the entire operation. The CDC wouldn't be a complete disaster, the director and four top officials wouldn't have just resigned, public health would not be a dumpster fire heading downwards every day. Some things would have been better, but Hillary had her head completely up Kissinger's butt, and just as many Palestinians would have been killed. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? The COVID death toll would have been a lot lower for two reasons. First, greater competency of the Clinton administration. Second, the right-wing misinformation would have flown in the opposite direction, much more similar to the right-wing fear-mongering we saw in 2014 about Ebola. You'd hear, "COVID is the Black Death, Hillary is lying, the death rate is well over 15%, millions of Americans have died. Hillary created it and unleashed it on an innocent China." The red states would have gone into full lockdown. SYG laws would have been amended to make it legal to shoot anyone not wearing a mask. Right-wingers would have locked themselves into their basements to save themselves from the Hillary plague, to the point that there would have been deaths from starvation, and the far right would have demanded that every single one of those deaths is recorded as a COVID fatality. This right-wing paranoia would have resulted in a much lower COVID case and death count during the summer of 2020. She might have still lost in 2020 with a race as to which happens first, the election or the death toll reaching 100,000. With the GOP screaming that Trump would have kept the death toll below 50,000, election night in our universe it was at 250,000 by the way, and in all likelihood the death toll would have reached 100k on November 5th. The death toll would have continued to be lower in 2021, as without Biden in office there would be no right-wing war on vaccines to try and keep the death toll high. Millions of right-wingers would have lined up to get vaccinated, with fights breaking out as demand outstrips supply. There's no anti-vax movement, there are no claims that the vaccine is killing thousands. Several 100,000 people who died in the summer and fall of 2021 just don't. By mid-2023, the COVID death toll in the USA is 200,000. I think there would totally be an anti-vax movement. It would just be the same weird hippie left fringe group that it was before COVID and wouldn't have spread nearly as far. I actually disagree with Hillary losing re-election in 2020, because when a crisis happens, that's actually historically been a second win for an incumbent, if they treat the crisis seriously, which Trump refused to do. He was actually handed a re-election win on a silver platter, and he completely bungled it by being so vain and proud that he had to cover up the seriousness of the pandemic. If you don't believe me, world leaders who treated the pandemic seriously generally got re-elected, and world leaders who didn't got booted. A more obvious example is how George Bush's approval rating skyrocketed in the aftermath of September 11th. Like he had more than 80% approval from the whole country. That's unheard of today. The reaction of the pandemic was make or break. If Hillary Clinton had shown she was doing everything she could to lower the deaths, it actually could have saved her if her approval numbers were slipping. It would be an F-ton better than it is now. We wouldn't have been stuck with this nut in the White House, a dictator, unqualified, convicted felon. We'd not be the laughingstock of the world. Clinics would still be legal and nobody would have lost their rights, and people wouldn't have been separated from their families. The country would be absolutely normal. The closest thing to any drama would be the GOP would still be investigating the Clintons. Meanwhile, our allies would continue to be our allies. The pandemic wouldn't have been politicized. Donald J. Trump would have launched that TV network he'd wanted to do from the start, and then faded into obscurity as people got bored of hearing him ramble on. Well, the MAGA folks would have remained in the closet with their racism, misogyny, crazy ideas, and beliefs. Less people would have died from COVID. There's a lot that would have been different. I don't think we can begin to comprehend how much Republicans would have lost their mind and gone frothing at the mouth insane during the pandemic when she urged precautions. But Gore was too boring, and Hillary was a warhawk. Biden was too old, and Kamala had a bad laugh. Give me a frickin' break. No, you got that one wrong. They claimed that Kamala slept her way to the top. I had a friend who bleated this out and I was speechless. They were too far gone from absorbing that Fox News bullcrap. Trump had zero political experience, but Kamala might have done the deed, therefore Trump 2024? God damn. Who knows? I feel like the world is just filled with nothing but phallus heads nowadays. Perhaps just as polarized because of the easily manipulated right-wing rage against her for 4 to 8 years, it would have been completely insane. But the US would almost certainly be on a much more normal track in terms of policy, operation, and simple, basic but critical things like the rule of law and adherence to the Constitution. The Supreme Court wouldn't be such a mess like it is now, from which it may never recover until America ultimately fails as a democracy, which is coming a lot faster than I'd ever expected, and the corruption of the Supreme Court is a big reason why. What we're facing now didn't start in 2017 or 2008 or 2001. This modern push started in the 80s with the backlash to the equal rights movement, the desegregation in specific, the new anti-freedom of religious movement, with literal witch hunts in the 80s, and the conservative co-opting of the NRA, and the problems around acquired immune deficiency syndrome. I mean, it was Richard Nixon. He built Reagan for that. My own elementary-aged children wouldn't have had to deal with a Christian nationalist Supreme Court when they're at the age of potentially having children of their own. Sorry fellas, we tried, but the right-wing brain rot and "you didn't earn my vote" crowds were just too strong. Hey folks, I have been keeping an eye out for contrary points of view here, but at least in this particular group of answers, they've all been fairly unanimously damning of the current administration, and with varying degrees of enthusiasm about the difference it would have made if Hillary won in 2016. I do believe in at least hearing out opposing arguments, even if I am in the camp of not liking the state of affairs in Washington at the moment. But yeah, I'm sorry for the apparent bias in the answers here. The thoughts of having a normal government or country make me want to cry. I hate what's happening. I think it would have been pretty similar to Obama's terms, to be honest. Well, the deficit would have been less. Thinking about it, the only difference would be the current Supreme Court, which would be great and a huge win for Dems and women and LGBTQ+. I think the pandemic, while Clinton was in charge, would have gone more smoothly as far as getting things to states faster and not having them beg her for tests and PPE. I think she'd see it spreading to Italy and ask companies to start using whatever plastic factories they had to manufacture things that we'd need, like Frederick Roosevelt did in World War II. Trump and MAGA would still be angry, he'd still say everything he did in 2020, and while doing so he'd make his MAGA base even bigger. He'd probably win in 2020 and run again in 24, and probably win because Democrats would be even more tired. Now, if Gore won in 2000, I can't imagine what it would be like today. Again, stronger Supreme Court, Bush nominated Roberts and Alito, and Obama probably would have still run in 2008? Although, if Obama won, we might be right back here because Trump started getting his MAGA base when Obama ran and was elected. Not sure where we'd be if Romney won instead of Obama in 2008. Calmer Republican Party for at least a little while, right? Or was Trump going to steamroll in 2016 regardless? Let's imagine if Al Gore won the election in 2000 instead of W being appointed by a 5-4 majority opinion from the Supreme Court. Maybe there's no September 11th attack, no war looking for weapons of mass destruction, no 20-year war in Afghanistan, maybe no world economic catastrophe in 2018. The list is endless. Does anyone else have anything they can think of to add to this long list? It would have been very bad. There would have been taco trucks on every corner. Had Hillary won, COVID would have still happened, Trump would have resurfaced and pushed all the BS conspiracy theories, Americans would have fallen for it because that's what we do, and Trump would have beaten her in 2020. Most likely he would have had 2 consecutive terms. Americans were never smart enough to avoid this, and Trump was never going to let it go. It's tough to be too optimistic because no matter what, you still have the rise of social media driving people to extremes, enabling conspiracy theorists and whack jobs. But I still think we'd be in a better place overall. The files about that one guy and his island would still not be released. The pivotal election wasn't 2016 when Trump beat Clinton. The pivotal election wasn't 2000 when Bush beat Gore, although that gets closer. We'd be in a significantly better spot if Gore had won. The pivotal election was 1980 when Reagan won in a landslide. Jimmy Carter was not a popular president in 1980. If he had been primaried or not run with incumbency, I don't know if Reagan would have won so big. But Reagan and his policies led to where we're at now. Class wars bred from trickle-down economics and Reaganomics, racist policies and destruction of affordable college, environmental deregulation, the list goes on. Well, the White House would have had a rose garden. I mean, it's just so crazy to think about. We've reversed so many good things in this country. We're afraid to speak up for our reproductive rights. We're targeted for hate. We can't even think about this without going crazy, but he's sending military into our cities. We're getting oil tycoons and no environmental department, which is sad. Judges are bad, we have so many mental health issues, and he reversed nationwide healthcare. I can't get out of bed in the morning. I look around and this country has been completely reversed. I honestly have both a therapist and a psychologist helping me cope. And lots of meds. What can we do? It's hopeless. I'm sure he'll find a way to run again. I can't even think about it. I'm tired and worn out, and I just want to give up. It would be better than what's currently going on, that's for sure. The most controversial issue surrounding her was an email server. Sure, we'd still be spreading democracy all over the place via bombs and corrupt regime installments, but at least our constitution wouldn't be torn to shreds. ICE for sure wouldn't be allowed to kidnap legal and illegal immigrants without due process. Trump stops getting the Republican nomination, most likely after losing again in 2020, and we're way better off for it. Trump is a system, not the cause of some much deeper issues in this country, and it doesn't die with him. You don't have to go too far back in history to see that our country always prospers more with a Democrat president. Safe bet that we'd be doing better. It would probably still be bad, but more boring. Like I'd feel annoyed, but not threatened. I feel at the very least, politics would be a background phenomenon like it always was. We wouldn't be reacting to insane headlines about awful crap happening every 3 hours. The biggest difference today would almost certainly be in the courts. She would have replaced Scalia with a liberal justice, and without Trump's 3 appointments, Roe v. Wade would likely still stand. Voting right cases would have gone the other way, and the federal bench would lean left rather than right. The US would still be in the Paris Climate Accord, the Iran nuclear deal wouldn't have collapsed, and allies in Europe wouldn't have spent 4 years questioning whether Washington was serious about NATO. The pandemic response would have been more coherent with clear messaging and stronger federal coordination, which probably would have lowered deaths even if resistance in parts of the country remained high. Domestic politics, however, would have been brutal. Republicans in Congress were already preparing to hound her with investigations, and populist resentment wouldn't have vanished just because Trump lost. It might even have intensified outside of government. What you wouldn't see is January 6 or the same erosion of institutional norms, because Clinton would have governed within the usual boundaries of the presidency, for better or worse. The country would have been more stable abroad, less chaotic in its institutions, and more progressive on climate and healthcare, but no less divided at home.
What stories do you rarely tell because nobody will believe you? I'm a living witness to something known as the McMasterville explosion. CIL, the paint company, made explosives. Their explosives factory, which was a giant factory on the same grounds as the paint-making factory. One night, the whole thing blew up. I was looking right at it when it went. Not just the explosives, but thousands of gallons of flammable liquids from other parts of the factory all went up at once. It was estimated to have the power of a 1 kiloton explosion. I lived on the side of a mountain called Mount St. Hilaire, a little over a mile away looking down at the factory site. When you see an explosion like that from a distance, the land ripples like water, like when you drop a stone in water. I was riding a bike. The ground shook me first, then the air blast knocked me on my butt. The factory was deliberately sunk into the ground and surrounded by a high trench wall in case it ever blew up so the nearby town of Beloil wouldn't get leveled. So the explosive force got punched into the ground and the factory was blown straight up into the air. Tons of wreckage rained down for miles. No one I know of was hit by anything, but many small fires were started all over the place. My next-door neighbor found a train wheel in his backyard, and it was red hot when he found it. Apparently, this occurred in 1972, and at least 6 people died.
That my father was arrested for stealing $100,000 worth of Hershey's Kisses, and during his time in jail I found out that he was not my biological father. My biological father owned a chain of restaurants that I frequented as a kid and teenager. I found all this out a few weeks after my 18th birthday.
What would you even want with $100,000 worth of Hershey's Kisses?
I was 6 years old and my parents took my family down to Disney World. Yay! On the flight down, the pilot made an announcement that if you looked out the window, you could see the space shuttle launching. It was kind of far away, but I could definitely see it in a plume of smoke. Very cool. We land in Orlando, and everyone is dead silent, glued to the TVs. It was the Challenger, and it exploded on launch. I saw the Challenger explode.
The 28th of January, 1986. I faked playing a xylophone for 2 years so I could go to China once. I played trombone for 8 years through middle and high school, and I knew a few people at my college before I went there. They convinced me to join marching band, but were always complaining that the band director wrote impossible drills, 10 counts to move, 30 yards in some instances, run through the bass drums, that sort of crap. I, being the genius that I was, figured, well, I played keyboard in a ska band for a couple couple years. How hard could xylophone be? Xylophones don't march after all. Answer: xylophone is pretty goddamn hard, and I'd never played one in my life before the first day of band camp, which is when the auditions were. The guy doing the auditions was the percussion instructor for the College of Music, and after my audition, he told me to put the mallets down, step back, and never play xylophone again, which, to be fair, I did butcher the crap out of hot cross buns due to some sort of administrative mess-up. They never got around to actually kicking me out that year, and I hung around and pretended to play the xylophone. Now, every 2 years, my college's marching band takes a big trip somewhere overseas to perform and yada yada yada, and I had entered on an off year. The second year, I show up and do the same thing, except the percussion instructor has been fired. I never really dealt with him beyond defending him with my ability to butcher xylophone music, but to my understanding, he was a general butthole and the music department had been wanting to chuck him out for some time, so they made a big stink about him doing some paperwork incorrectly or something. So it was left to our section leaders to audition the section, and being good friends with the section leader, he just said, "Jenkins, hit something every now and again, but not very hard and make it look like you're playing," so that's what I did. I found the softest mallet in the place, barely tapped the keys, wham, bam, going to China. Everything would have worked out peachy. Except our band director also didn't pay any attention to the orchestra pit. So when he was doling out parts for the music we were going to play in China, he assigned me to concert bells. Like that tiny little 50-pound xylophone that has a sound that would cut through an aerial bombardment. Not only that, I had a solo at the beginning of The Moon Represents My Heart, which, as it was explained to me, is basically Somewhere Over the Rainbow for Chinese people. Everybody knows the song. It's a cultural treasure and not something you want to mess up at a national landmark, because folks will notice. So I busted my butt actually learning how to play that bit over the span of a couple months and managed to avoid offending the people of Shanghai and Beijing. Not all the people, though. A group of Chinese youths caught me urinating into a bush in Shanghai's club district, and I had to duck into a place called Highway 3 with my dinger still hanging out to get away from them. Got to play a set of concert bells on the Great Wall and see a whole bunch of stuff in China, though. It's ridiculous to me that seemingly no one who was ever in charge of this marching band really had any clue what the hell they were doing, or what was going on really with this band. When I was 19, some friends and I were visiting New York City. After picking them up from the airport, we decided it would be fun to drive down Broadway at night and see it all lit up. It was fun. We got some good pictures from the car, and around 8:30 we decided to drive home. Going northbound on the West Henry Hudson, we were talking and listening to some Journey when someone hopped the highway divider and ran out in front of my car, stopped, and looked right at us. There was no time to stop, no time to swerve, and at 50 miles per hour, he came crashing straight through the front windshield, hitting my best friend directly in the face. Immediately, I pulled over and called the police, then went to look to see if there were any slim chances the man might still be alive. I saw his legs swerved roughly 4 to 6 inches above the knee and on the road near where my car had stopped. My friend in the back seat was crying her eyes out, and my buddy was amped up on adrenaline and shock in the front seat waiting for the police to arrive and remove him from the car. Walking further back, I saw a bunch of people who had stopped to help crowded around the man. I saw his head caved in and a dark pool underneath him, before a kind old gentleman turned me away, saying, "You don't need to see this." In almost no time at all, the fire department was there helping my friend who had a broken nose and shards of glass embedded in his eye and face out of the car. When the ambulance arrived, they tried to pull him in with the man I had hit, which made him freak out and refuse and wait for another ambulance. The cops on the scene took down my story and ran a breathalyzer on me, but I hadn't been drinking. At this time in my life, I didn't drink. Then put my friend from the back seat and I in the back of a car to try and calm us down while they waited for the investigators to arrive. I had called my mom, who lived outside the city, to tell her I had been in an accident and that she should come for support. After about an hour, the investigators arrived, took time marking off the scene, and interviewed us again about what had happened. The police were very nice and all of us were in shock. After interviewing me, I asked the investigator where I could go to the bathroom. He nodded to the trees on the side of the highway and said to have at it. So I stood on the dimly lit bloody highway near the trees and under the watchful eye of the 50-block traffic jam I had created, and let forth a stream I had been holding for hours. Afterwards, they took us back to the local precinct to finish paperwork and meet up with my mom and sister, who were waiting there, after having left my stepbrother with my friend who had been taken to the hospital. They had gotten lost and caught in the same traffic I caused, which is why they didn't meet us at the scene. With the paperwork done, my mum asked what had happened to the man. The officer looked at my little sisters and then asked my mum and I to step outside. It was DOA. He had been released from prison that morning. I was shocked when he extended his hand to me and thanked me for helping to clean up the city. After going to the hospital to get my friend and stepbrother, we went home for the evening. The next day, when we picked up my car from the auto shop, I saw the meager sunlight, the after image of what had transpired, blood and brain matter all over the front of my car, an imploded front windshield, and entering the car to take it to a place to get the glass repaired, a large chunk of bloody skull in the passenger seat next to me, hidden under some napkins. My friend who had been in the passenger seat wandered over and I told him not to look inside, but he wouldn't listen and did anyway. I think that is when the reality of what happened sunk in for him, because his eye grew large and he turned around silently to go sit in my mom's car. The entire experience was completely surreal, especially during the drive to get the windshield repaired when alone I drove the car to the shop, the wind whistling through the broken glass. I want to believe that when the cop said, "Thanks for cleaning up the city," the guy who died was maybe just a real piece of work and did some awful stuff, but maybe this dude is just completely indifferent about this stuff, which is pretty horrible. My other thought is that this individual also enjoys creative writing. TLDR, almost had a knife to my brain because of some crazy quack doctor leaping to very rash conclusions. Don't you hate it when doctors jump to conclusions? I know I've posted this somewhere before, but anyway, I was 10, lived out in rural America where my closest neighbor was a football field's length away. Between us was an overgrown field that backed up to my neighbor's horse pasture. I used to run through the fields full blast with weeds and grass stalks and wildflowers that were taller than me. I didn't give a crap. So one morning I wake up and something isn't right. I have this horrible pain in my neck. My neck! Oh God, what happened to my neck? My neck was swollen to the point of it jutting past my chin. It was like a 350-pound person's neck on a little 90-pound girl. I screamed. Mom screamed when she saw it. We took off for the pediatrician right away. Of course, as fate would have it, my usual pediatrician wasn't in that day, so a stand-in was there. I remember very mild tests going on, nothing too crazy, before the doctor explains to my mother that it's a brain tumor and I'll have to have brain surgery right away. I am freaking out, and my mom isn't too calm either. She, however, rationalizes, and before she makes her plans to have them cut into my skull, takes me to her own doctor for a second opinion. The RN at that office peers at me for a minute, performs a few other mild tests, and then goes, "Aha," and lifts up my ponytail. She points at this small bump on the back of my neck and proudly exclaims, "Spider bite." 2 days rest and some penicillin and I was 100% again. That was a pretty crazy conclusion to come to after it's like, well, when did the lump show up? Just this day. Then again, what kind of crazy spider bite was it? Around the age of 12, I was diagnosed with severe OCD. I struggled with it so much that I had psychiatrists say they could do no more for me. A therapist that made house calls, and I've even participated in studies, evaluated on the other side of a one-way mirror kind of stuff. Perhaps in desperation, my parents eventually sent me to a psychiatric hospital halfway across the country which specialized in the treatment of OCD. I was there for 3 months until my insurance ran out. Now I'm 22 years old and I've overcome it so much that nobody besides family even realizes anything is/was ever wrong with me. With all these people running around saying I'm so OCD, I eat my M&Ms one color at a time, and them not knowing me back then, I don't even bother divulging a part of my life they would be unable to comprehend the severity of. You know, I totally get that. As someone with ADHD who used to get support of it when I was a kid, and I used to see these people and they'd say to me things like, "So, is your ADHD better now? Is it gone yet?" And I go, well, I don't think it works like that. I absolutely hated those meetings, but my point is those issues, mental disorders, learning difficulties never really go away. You simply learn to adjust your life around it and behave accordingly in certain situations, and people often don't talk about that much. I'm late to the thread, so this will probably get buried, but hey, I feel like telling the story. It's a bit spooky. Hopefully someone will find it a good read. My mom and I moved into a completely normal/average house when I was about 15. Everything was fine. We loved it. One day I was home sick from school and I was messing around on the computer when I heard our garage door open. I freaked out and went down the hall to get my mobile phone and saw the hallway door that connects to the garage opening. I panicked and yelled, "Get out!" and 2 young boys slammed the door and ran off. I started started crying and called my mom. I don't know why I didn't call the police first, who told me to go next door to my neighbors and she was going to come home from work. When she got home, she was speaking to my neighbor for a bit. She, the neighbor, ended up telling us that she thought it was probably the young boy that lived in the house before us. Apparently, he sometimes goes around to everyone's houses and breaks in and eats their food and watches TV and stuff. And for whatever reason, they were all okay with that. Apparently, he came from some sort of broken home and they all felt sorry for him, so they didn't call the police. Mom and I were completely unsettled by that and put new locks on all the doors that week. We didn't care if the other neighbors were okay with that. We weren't. A few months pass and nothing ever happens again. We figure he knows we're not cool with his weirdness and doesn't try to break in again. A week or so later, I'm in bed asleep and I wake up in the middle of night for no reason at all. I'm not hot or cold. I don't need to pee. I didn't have a nightmare. I just woke up. I had this incredibly uneasy and weird feeling wash over me. I felt like something or someone was watching me and I got completely freaked out. I went into my mom's room and slept in her bed that night. It kept happening a few nights and I thought I was just having nightmares or was getting scared of the dark for some reason. I ended up sleeping in my mom's bed for about a week because I got so legit scared of the dark now. I finally worked up the courage to sleep in my own bed one night, but I could barely sleep. I felt totally uneasy, nervous, scared. I got to sleep for a bit, but then I woke up again. I looked outside my window and I could swear I saw a face/figure of someone standing there. Obviously, I noped the hell out and ran back to my mom. One of the nights I was back in her bed. We were all asleep and feeling fine when I woke up to my dog on the end of the bed growling. Now, our dog is an old golden retriever and has never growled or barked at anything. She is a huge wuss and completely placid. She has no problem with strangers, even if someone knocks on the door and comes in. She couldn't care less. So I wake up all dazed, confused, and half asleep. I hear the dog growling and I'm asking her, what's wrong? I look up from the bed and I am not lying to you. There is a man standing in the doorway with a knife. I screamed like a banshee and the dog started barking at this point. Mom woke up and saw the man too. He went running down the hallway and out the back door. I'm crying my eyes out. The dog is barking her face off and Mom is frantically trying to call the police. An hour later, they finally get here and of course, the dude is gone. Morning comes and we go outside to see that the back gate has had its lock cut with bolt cutters and the door leading into the house had been smashed in. The cops come in and dust for prints and leave crap everywhere, but at the end of the day, they can't and don't do anything. We moved out that same day and went to live with my grandmother and grandfather until we found a new house. Pretty much no one in the family believed us or thought we were just making it up for attention. My family are buttholes. A few weeks later, we get a call from the police and they managed to match the prints to some teenager who just got arrested for breaking into another house. It's the same guy that was breaking into all the houses in the neighborhood and used to live in the house we were in. So Mom's talking to the cops and some of the neighbors when suddenly someone tells us completely casually, "Oh yeah, that's the Millet kid." Wait, did they just say Millet? Yeah, pretty much any Australian will know this last name. Ivan Millet, the serial killer. His nephew was breaking into people's homes and our home while we were sleeping with a knife, and people were okay with that. So anyway, we move into a new house and forget all about it. Until a year ago, Millet's nephew gets 43 years jail sentence. He and his friend murdered another teenager in the same goddamn place his uncle dumped all those bodies. WTF. So, the guy that broke into our house watched me while I was asleep and stood in our bedroom doorway with a knife while we were sleeping, actually murdered another teenager a few years later. Mom and I nearly fell over when we heard about it. No one really believes us, which really annoys me, but it really happened. Sometimes when I think back on what could have happened if I slept in my own bed that night, or if the dog didn't bark, or if we were never woken up, it really freaks me out. It's also left me with a huge fear of the dark. I get really uneasy if I have to go outside at night by myself or if I wake up in the middle of the night. Well, goddamn, I'm English and even I know who Ivan Millet is. But that is a legitimately terrifying story. I went to college at Belmont University in Nashville from 1999 until 2002. While I was there, I worked for record labels, as did a lot of friends who were all in the music business program. Well, one buddy worked for a label called Red Hill Records as an intern/gopher/indentured servant. So on occasion, we could go to events and meet industry people and artists, as this was a small label. They had an artist that we became friends with named Katie Hudson, who was a singer-songwriter at about 17 years old. We hung out all the time since we were just 18 ourselves and had nothing to do but study and bum around coffee shops. As our friendship developed, my roommate developed a huge crush on her. She never seemed to reciprocate the feeling, so I asked her what was wrong with him. You know, trying to be a good friend. And she revealed that she liked me instead of him. So, since I wanted to be a good friend, I had to turn her down because of his feelings for her. That girl went on to be Katy Perry. I kid you not. I suppose that's pretty impressive. I'm not really a Katy Perry person, but good for this guy. And while I'm not going to read them, some of the follow-up comments are pretty cringe. My friend's father owned a Mercedes CLS when I was a senior in high school. One day when his father is gone, we take it out. We have some ganja in both of our grinders in the cup holders, which was freaking stupid. We always put that stuff in the trunk. As we approach a downsloped hill near our school in the most cliche manner possible, he decides he wants to show me how fast his dad's car can go. The road was narrow and the slope was pretty steep downwards, but went right back up after it reached the bottom. He books it, and by the time we reach the bottom of the hill, we're probably going 90 miles per hour. Right at the bottom, we pass a cop, like frickin' fly right by him. He turns his lights on and tries to turn around, but one or two cars gets between us and him. The road was so narrow that he had to do like a 3-point turn to get all the way around. We start to frickin' panic. I have no idea what came over me at this point. Only about 3 seconds after we see the cop, but seeing that it took him so long to turn around made me look at my friend and say, "Keep going." We go to the top of the hill, still going fast AF, take a right, go about 100 yards and take a left into a neighborhood. We go down a random driveway in a cul-de-sac park and turn the car off. We chuck all of the ganja materials out of the car and slump down in our chairs, peeking back. We see the cop go around the cul-de-sac and leave the neighborhood. I swear to God, it was like the goddamn Italian Job. Never been so scared in my life. You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off. My mom thought Paul McCartney kidnapped me. My mom was walking with me on the beach in the Hamptons when I was an infant. McCartney came up to my mom and asked if he could hold me. My mom was in desperate need of the bathroom and didn't want to go inside with me, so she asked if McCartney wouldn't mind watching me for a few minutes. Apparently, I started sobbing, so he paced up and down the beach and my mom couldn't find me when she came out of the bathroom. She called my dad and they spent 2 hours looking for me before they found McCartney sitting on a bench chair with me in his arms. I don't care if the baby's crying. You stand exactly where I left you with my baby. If someone trusts you with their baby, you don't move an inch. This may get buried and not be as interesting as some of the others, but I have one that nobody ever believes. When I was in 4th grade, I was completely obsessed with Chuck Berry. I mean, religiously obsessed. I still am to a certain extent, but that was back in the day when I was first discovering rock and roll. Well, as fortune would have it, Chuck Berry came to my city to perform at the local venue. He must have been in his 70s at this point. I was beyond excited, so of course, my mother, being the caring and loving parent that she is, bought tickets and we went. The whole entire show, I was in the very front, and then I had an idea. I didn't know if it could possibly work or not, but there was a pause, and I went for it. While Chuck was tuning his guitar, I started yelling, "Mr. Berry, Mr. Berry!" To my absolute bewilderment, he leaned in from the stage and with a huge grin on his face asked me, "What's up, little buddy?" To which I replied, "Can I please sing Johnny Be Good with you?" Holy crap, he says yes. I'm a 4th grader on stage at a huge venue with the father of rock and roll about to sing one of his most famous songs with him. He starts the opening riff. I'm shaking, but not from stage fright. No, it was from sheer shock of being in this situation. I start singing. The crowd erupts. I bellow out the song. At the end, Chuck asks me, "What's your name, young man?" I tell him my name. The crowd starts cheering my name for a solid minute. It was the most incredible feeling and hands down the best gift I've ever received. Now, personally, I'm more of a fan of Maybelline, why can't you be true? Oh, Maybelline, why can't you be true? You just started doing the things you used to do.
For those who have witnessed a wedding objection during the "speak now or forever hold your peace" portion, what happened? My mom got married to my stepdad. My uncle objected. After the attention was focused on him, he asked if they were still going fishing afterwards, to which my stepdad reached into his suit and pulled out his fishing hat. Very sweet and romantic. They loved to fish together. I was working at a wedding when I was younger. I was running the bar at the reception, which was very close to the hall the weddings were at. We We were told that the reception would begin around 4 p.m. It was already about 3-ish and I was packing the fridges, the usual barman things, while one of the male guests was sitting there drinking. I asked if he was not joining the reception, to which he replied something along the lines of, "When I have the courage." He downs his drink and leaves. 10 minutes later, he's back, looking extremely disappointed. The guy orders a drink and less than 30 seconds later, another guy who's dressed extremely well, turns out to be the groom, walks in, punches him in the back of the head, and leaves. This dude just picked up his drink and continued sipping. I eventually found out that this dude had downed his drink, walked into the ceremony, and admitted to sleeping with the wife on her hen night, and again the night before the wedding. He was never invited to the wedding. He just felt the groom needed to know. So he found out where the wedding was, suited up, and dropped the info mid-ceremony. This was in the early 70s in semi-rural Washington state. My cousin was getting married, and my aunt and the mother of the groom did not get along well. During the ceremony, when the pastor got to the part about objecting, my aunt said something to my uncle, and the groom's mom jumped up and grabbed my aunt and they started going at it, all the way out the door and into the parking area. They were separated and everyone filed back into the barn, where the wedding continued. The best part though was when another one of my cousins simply walked into the woods after the wedding because that's where he lived. My aunt was getting married to her second husband, and during the "speak now or forever hold your peace" bit, their baby started crying. The dude officiating it said, "If anyone older than 6 months has any objections, speak now or forever hold your peace." He got a laugh and the wedding carried on. They're still together 10 years later, so I guess whatever my cousin had to say was misinformed. The best man at my stepsister's wedding did this. It happened at the rehearsal the night before. It was a very large wedding and the rehearsal was bigger than a lot of weddings. The minister was going over the vows quickly while giving instruction on what to do. When he said something about objections, the best man interrupted saying he had to put a stop to this. He was in love with the bride and was sure she felt the same way. My sister and everyone else was horrified. It caused plenty of chaos and confusion. As far as I know, after that, neither the bride nor groom ever spoke to him again. At my cousin's wedding, when the exchanging of the vows took place, my aunt shouted, "Wasn't there supposed to be a part where you could object?" Or something along those lines. A member of my wife's family had a pirate-themed wedding. A rival pirate appeared and objected to the wedding. The groom dueled him with rapiers and won. The groom himself, he just stood up there and started crying, and in front of everyone told the bride that he'd fallen out of love with her a while before, but he didn't know how to break it off. It was extremely uncomfortable. They both stepped out and 10 minutes later came back out and got married because she'd apparently told him she was pregnant. They're still together with 3 kids, and I'm not sure about the husband, but I can confirm that the wife is having an affair. Neither of them are happy, but she has a comfortable life and he doesn't seem to have the spine to leave. Nobody had said "speak now," but the groom's ex still decided to get up and scream that he was her soulmate, and that she forgave him for this whole thing and that they should leave now because he'd proven his point by breaking up with her 5 years earlier, falling in love, and holding a wedding. I ate so much cake and got so drunk at that wedding. Meanwhile, everyone else was screaming and throwing things. Good times. The bride was my boyfriend's ex. No idea why they invited us. One of my friends interrupted his cousin's wedding to come out of the closet. He couldn't understand why people were so pissed at him. This happened very recently, but in a different manner than the other comments I'm seeing. For years, the groom and the best man are super close, room together, and the running joke is that they're more than friends. Later on, groom meets bride, falls in love, and proposes. New running joke is that the best man is very disappointed that the groom is marrying someone else. At the wedding, the officiant asks if anyone objects. Best man objects. Officiant quickly overrules the objection. It was planned, and the bride thought it was a funny way to acknowledge the super close friendship between the groom and the best man. Didn't result in anyone being kicked out or awkwardness. Fun and surprisingly appropriate. I was at an outdoor ceremony once with a storm coming in. The pastor was trying to move things along so that we wouldn't get caught in the rain. The reception was indoors. He asked if anyone knows of any objection, and instantly there was a loud clap of thunder. To his credit, the pastor just paused a moment and then said, "Anyone else? Alright, in that case," and finished the ceremony. Only once, but it was non-romantic. The father of the bride had been pretty absent after her parents' divorce. He had remarried and gotten into the Christian Science religion, and they were both pretty terrible. The new wife was not invited to my friend's wedding, but the father came, and it seemed like he was there to be supportive. He stood up during vows and proclaimed my friend was a B-word just like her mother, and the groom should get out while you can because she's a soul-leeching succubus. Not the worst wedding I ever went to. Went to a coworker's wedding and the maid of honor objected and admitted to being the other woman and that the groom had been cheating with her for months. The bride left in tears and the groom immediately tried to get with the maid of honor, but she told him she wasn't going to hurt the bride further and that he needed to screw off. The bride is doing much better and is now a manager here, and I haven't heard from the groom in over a year. The maid of honor and bride are on speaking terms, but I don't think their relationship is ever going to be what it used to be. I saw it nearly happen at my uncle's wedding. A friend of theirs got too drunk, and when they said, "Speak now," he smiled and started to stand up. My mother grabbed him by his hair and sat him back down by force. When I was 13, we went to my second cousin's wedding. Everything's going great. They even got past the speak now or forever hold your peace part. They wrote their own vows. But before my second cousin's fiance/wife could even begin her vows, his son got up and announced to the entire room that she was cheating on his dad with her drug dealer, and he couldn't let his dad marry her. My second cousin yelled at his son to either sit down or leave. The son left. My second cousin married her anyways, and 5 years and 1 baby later, he finds out it was true, and they separated, but were too tweaked out to be able to afford a divorce. Finally, he got married a third time, but before he could get married, his third now ex-wife had to pay for their divorce. This wedding had no objections. They moved to Missouri, and this time instead of separating or asking for a divorce, he decided he didn't want to be married anymore and just moved back to Cali to get back together with his second ex-wife. Yeah, family dinners are a little awkward. It was at my wedding that we had at my grandmother's house, who lives in the country next to a cattle farm. The cows didn't make a peep until that moment, and one finally went moo. We all laughed and continued, but it was a funny moment about my wedding. About 5 years ago, a coworker of mine invited all of us to his wedding. He was a great guy, but none of us had ever met his wife. We'd seen pictures of her, and he always said nothing but good things of her. Fast forward to the wedding. It was an incredibly nice one. Looks like they paid quite a bit for it. Everything was going smooth, and I was having fun, and assumed everyone else was as well. Anyway, now they're both at the altar or whatever, looking deeply into each other's eyes and smiling. And when that line comes of "speak now or forever hold your peace," I get anxious, but nothing ever happens. So, right as soon as the anxiousness fades away, the bride's mother stood up and objected. Blurted out some crap about how she doesn't want to continue their family with a man like him. He was black and she was white. The bride cried and ran off. The wedding went silent. Bride's dad took the mom and ran after the bride. The groom stood there, incredibly awkward. He may or may not have achieved actually leaving his body. Anyway, the groomsmen took him away. I left because it was too weird. Apparently the reception went on. They did not get married that day, but ended up together anyway privately. And surprisingly, work wasn't weird. He laughed about it and they're happily married. A wedding I was at, a guy got up and pledged his undying love for the bride, followed by 4 or 5 others objecting for various reasons, including one guy's love for the groom. By the second or third objection though, it was clear that the whole thing was a clever ruse. I found out later that it was all set up by the bride as a prank on the unsuspecting groom and family and friends. It was pretty hilarious. My wife dragged me to a wedding that I did not want to be at years ago, but I'm forever grateful that she did, because I was able to witness one of the greatest spectacles of human drama that has ever taken place. This was like an episode of Jerry Springer mixed with Cops. The bride's lover spoke up at that moment and yelled, "I'll be goddamned if I'm gonna keep my mouth shut and let you steal my woman." This deranged old redneck proceeds to come at the groom with a pistol, threatening to shoot him if he doesn't give her up. It wasn't a huge wedding, maybe 40 or so people, but every single one of them went screaming and running, and maybe 2 people stayed and called the cops. I grabbed my wife's hands and we retreated outside to watch the rest of the scene unfold from the church window. The groom's dad interrupted the wedding to ask the bride's father whether or not she was truly a virgin. Then he went on about how he didn't know anything of the wedding and blah blah blah. Truly weird and embarrassing. I went to a wedding when I was 5. It was between my older brother and his fiancée. Anyways, they said the whole speak now spiel, and right before he was done, little 5-year-old me said, "I object!" And everyone turned to me. I was dead silent because I didn't know what happened. My dad asked me, "Well, why do you object?" And I said, "I wanted to know what would happen if I did." And I was promptly seated. At my own wedding, but not in the traditional way. We were getting married along a river at the end of summer, and tons of wakeboarders and boats were out. I was a ball of nerves, and the ceremony felt so serious, when all of a sudden some dude bro on a boat blasting music screamed, "Don't do it, bro!" and sped off. It was actually hilarious and made the rest of the ceremony a lot more fun. My husband and I cracked up, even though his brothers looked like they were about to jump in the river after the guy. No objections were made, unfortunately, but back when I worked in a hotel a few years ago, I got to witness a very interesting wedding, where maybe someone should have objected. In preparation, we had to ensure we'd ordered enough blue WKD in, as this was the groom's drink of choice. First red flag. The whole wedding took place in the hotel. The function room also hosted the ceremony, so we started pretty early that day. Before the ceremony, the bride had taken 3 bottles of wine up to her room while she was getting ready, and was clearly tipsy before the wedding started, but seemed to act sober enough that whoever was conducting the ceremony was none the wiser. The ceremony seemed normal, but I was prepping the bar, so wouldn't have known either way. As it ends, all the guests flood out for drinks, whilst we changed the function room and set out the tables for the sit-down meal. The guests were really rough, rub some dirt on it type people, to put it politely. I already knew one of them as he'd been in the hotel before, acting like a total jerk when I told him the bar was closed and I wouldn't be serving him. However, he was being especially polite to me this time, as it was clear his date for the wedding was definitely not the same girl he was in with just a few weeks ago, who I suspected was a paid acquaintance. Before the meal even began, we were starting to worry if we'd have enough alcohol. These people drank like fish, but we managed to get them all seated and fed, and everyone is being friendly and well behaved. As the night goes on, the bride is slowly becoming so drunk she can barely stand, and has changed from her wedding dress into a very scant pink negligee with a tutu skirt. She's also given up on using the bathroom, so she loudly announces she will be relying solely upon nature wheeze from this point on. Before midnight, we were nearly totally out of spirits. The guests are ordering shots every round. I'd tried to deny service, but my manager was having none of it, and as the hotel was struggling, they wanted to make as much money as possible. They've drank us out of almost everything. Blue WKDs are long gone, but the groom has a lovely blue smile at this point. After the bride finally gives up trying to shoot disgusting liquors that have likely been sitting there since the hotel was built, they head to the dance floor. The party starts winding down and it's time for the last dance, but the bride decides she'd prefer to have this with a male wedding guest, which really peeves off the groom. She then loudly announces she'll be throwing an after party in their suite and everyone is invited in the hot tub. Funnily enough, the groom isn't thrilled and kicks off. Another member of staff manages to calm everyone down and convinces the DJ to play the last dance song once more before he leaves, and the groom agrees. Everyone starts packing up and the bride comes back from her room in her third outfit of the night, a nice gray stained tracksuit. She's adamant she wants another cigarette before bed. God knows how many packs she went through that day, especially sad considering the money for the wedding came from her parents' inheritance who both died of cancer. She can't find a lighter and becomes irate, screaming at the groom for one. The groom claims he doesn't have one, but not taking no for an answer, she rifles through his pockets and finds one. Holding it aloft, she screams at him that he's a liar and slaps him clean across the face. The groom, obviously not having enjoyed this, returns the favor and punches her in the face. The best man spots this and leaps across the sofa and tackles the groom to the floor. They're now having a full-on fist fight while the bride sobs incoherently. I try and get out of the way as I'm being trampled by Mr. WKD and his scummy friend. My supervisor storms in saying he found coke in the bathroom and the police are on their way. The best man is off like a robber's dog, and the groom stands there stunned, and then follows his new wife into the function room. We then hear screaming and shouting from that room, and the bride has picked up a chair and launched it at her husband, and was now holding a second one trying to attack him with it. At this point, it's about 2 a.m. and I am royally done with the day. My mom is waiting for me outside, so I grab my bag and head off, giving my supervisor strict instructions to tell me exactly how this ends when I'm back for my next shift. I pass a riot van of police officers on the way out the door, direct them to the drama, and go home. Next shift, I'm informed that an ambulance arrived shortly after the police. The groom was taken to the hospital after sustaining a head injury, but he did a runner from the paramedics when he got to the hospital. The bride stayed at the hotel and, to console herself, spent the night with the male wedding guest she danced with. They left together in the morning and a week later announced on Facebook she was in a new relationship with him. The guy ended up objecting kind of late. It was right before the bride and groom kissed. The man who objected told the bride that the groom was marrying her for the wrong reasons. There was a little bit of tussle between the security guards and the objector, but there is a happy ending to this story. A dragon showed up and ate Lord Farquaad. Then Shrek and Fiona lived happily ever after. I was a best man at a wedding, and the groom's older sister decided to play a joke and stood up and said, "I object." Groom's mother stood up, slapped her, told her this was an inappropriate joke, and told her to go home. This mother still refuses to talk to her daughter 4 years later. I was at an Orthodox Jewish wedding with a ceremony where they read a contract and recite 7 blessings. The groom's dad pinched his son's butt at a most solemn moment, causing him to shriek loudly into a silent audience of 400. The bride saw and snorted loudly. They also publicly kissed after the ceremony, which was a huge scandal. To be fair, I didn't witness this, but it happened to my parents. My mom invited an ex she was still rather close with to her wedding, and he stood up and yelled, "I object." Little did everyone at the wedding know, my dad had gotten rather close with him and paid him to stand up and object, just for the laughs, and he burst out laughing. My mom didn't find it as funny, and it really started their marriage off on the right foot. Not quite the speak now part, but you'll see. A friend of mine was getting married in the park under the trees because both of them were nature people and the groom had a dog that went everywhere with him that wasn't allowed in any church. Because dog, despite being well trained and quiet. There were some rows of chairs with lots of people filling them, including groom's mother who was sitting with his dog. Bride and groom were at the front with the officiant. Officiant begins. Officiant comes to the part where he says, "Do you take?" And groom's dog, Shadow, begins to howl a loud, long, mournful howl. Everyone laughed. Officiant started the question again. Loud, long, mournful howl again. Everyone laughed. The groom told Shadow to come to the front. Shadow ran up, stood directly in between the bride and groom, and the officiant started again. Not a peep from Shadow. Her vows, his vows. Officiant looked at Shadow and asked, "Shadow, do you take the bride and groom to be your lawfully wedded parents?" Shadow barked one single bark. Officiant concluded the ceremony, everyone cheered and clapped, and Shadow barked 3 times. The only time that he's made any sounds. Not kidding. Beautiful dog, too. So I'm attending this ultra-chill beach wedding in small-town Canada. I don't know anyone because it was my ex-step-aunts, so my brother's family that I never see. It was fun anyways. The bride flew in on a seaplane and all the chairs were set up on the sand. Anyways, the groom is from Trinidad and Tobago, so all his relatives traveled a long way and had cool accents. There was a party before and we were all a little tipsy. So as the ceremony progresses, everyone's watching, getting teary-eyed from the vows, and then the line comes. Any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony? Speak now. Nobody expected this, but the father of the groom gets up flailing and a collective gasp followed by silence overtakes this tiny venue. We're all waiting with bated breath, but he's just standing there with glassy eyes. Turns out he was baked. This 70-plus man in a suit and dreads laughs and says, "No, I kid. And the whole spirit of the audience cheers up as he sits back down. Rest of the reception, people are going up to him saying, "Good one," or scolding him. It was a really great night though. Best wedding I've been to. I attended a wedding as a guest of a family member, and when the pastor said that, the doors busted open to the sanctuary and a man appeared and started to say, "I do." But two huge ushers, one who was my date, quickly grabbed the guy before he could say anything but, They grabbed him under the arms and literally lifted him up off the floor and carried him out. The wedding continued as normal. Turned out the guy was the ex of the bride. Strangest sight I ever saw. I once went to a wedding where both families were Irish. My girlfriend knew them, but I didn't. At the ceremony, the groom's ex-wife started shouting and was gently directed outside. I couldn't hear what she said. The reception was amazing. Nice venue and all, but a bunch of guests had brought their own instruments and just started jamming what I can only describe as a genuine Irish jig. This went on for hours and remains a lasting memory of oral beauty. But I digress. There was a lot of booze. There was no responsible serving of alcohol, and I'm certain it was by design. At some point, I used the men's room and was curious if I'd just seen the groom in a stall, door open, with someone who was not the bride. I didn't know these people and it might have just been someone else, so I said nothing. Sometime later, and the girlfriend states seriously, "We should get going now." Yeah, sure. We grab our stuff and head downstairs. I see the suspicious fellow again in the stairwell, going to absolute town on this same lady. My girlfriend grabs my arm tightly and keeps walking past, mumbles a thank you for the invite. I just smile and follow cause it's all weird. Yeah, that was the groom, octopusing his ex-wife, at his own wedding to another woman. The bride genuinely seemed like a gem. The look that woman gave us as we passed was this smugly dominant, "I always get what I want, hell yeah," drunk as hell look. Wow. They had some reasonable bubbly in a tub for people to take home. And who would know or care if we horked a few extras? I got it all explained to me after we were in a cab and well on our way home. I never got a follow-up on that story, but 10 out of 10 on the music. Would tag along again to an Irish wedding.
People, what is your strangest glitch in the Matrix moment that cannot be explained? When my son was about 4 years old, one night he started hounding me to ring Nana. He had never asked to call her before, so I just put him off for an hour or so and he came back and insisted that I call her. Turns out she was sitting on her lounger experiencing a massive tachycardia event and couldn't breathe. I called an ambulance and met her at the hospital. The same week, she had a pacemaker and defibrillator unit implanted to fix the problems. To this day, I cannot explain what drove him to get me to call, but I'm very glad he did. He doesn't even remember it. I don't know why, for the life of me, but it just took me 20 times to clearly say he doesn't even remember it. This happened to people I know, not me directly. A woman who works with my mom was out doing her grocery shopping one night and ran into me at the supermarket. She told my mom about the encounter the next day and asked why I didn't recognize her, as we saw each other once every few weeks when I'd go and help with any heavy lifting at their store. My mom confirmed that it couldn't have been me as I was at home. The woman also mentioned feeling oddly nauseous during the interaction. I was about 16 or 17 at the time. Another woman I know said she didn't know I walked through the park near her home after work. Dumbfounded by her observation, I listened as she explained that she'd seen me every so often after work, walking briskly through a large park, which I do know of but have only driven past, as if I was exercising. She said I walked close by her the previous evening and she was going to speed up to catch up with me and say hello, but as she started to, she began to feel ill, so she slowed down and then sat on a bench for a few minutes. By then, she'd lost sight of me. This happened about 3 years ago and both occurrences were miles apart. I can't believe I forgot about this, but it happened when I was 20. I was living on campus on the ground floor of a 3-story building. There were only 36 people in the building, so I knew everyone by sight at least when this happened. A new guy moved into the 3rd floor. We'd exchanged pleasantries and I knew his name and what floor he lived on, but not much else. I was coming out of the front door one morning and he was coming down the stairs and said, "Oh, I just saw your sister going up the stairs." I asked him what he meant and he said, "Your sister? She's here all the time? She wears her hair the same as you?" I used to change my hair a lot. At the time, it was midway down my back and fire truck red. There was nobody on campus with hair like mine. I noped out and went back inside. You know, it might be hard to accept for some people, because I know we live in a time where everyone likes to think they're a special little snowflake, but some of us just have that face, that body, and even that sense of fashion. You just look like a lot of people. I stopped at a gas station on my way to work one morning. I take out my debit card and take my car keys with me and leave everything in the car. Pay for my stuff and throw my debit card in the metal cup I have in my car. Literally half a second later, I look down and my card is gone. Pulled apart everything trying to look for it and couldn't find it. I go to work and go home to find it sitting on my desk. Double check my bank account to make sure it was the card I used, and it was. To this day, I still have no idea what happened. I mean, I can't explain that either really, unless, you're a liar. Saw a dude with no face driving a car. No features at all. It was just blank. I did more than just glance at him. I was staring. Just smooth skin and a men's haircut. I've never told anyone because it's so ridiculous sounding and I don't think people would believe me. Probably a rational explanation for it, I suppose, but man, what the hell? Maybe some kind of prankster or whatever trying to freak people out or something, or maybe you were doing something you shouldn't have been doing while driving. I've posted this before, but my family go to a garden center near my town every winter. Pretty Christmas lights. Well, this one year, the day before we were supposed to go, I had a dream that on our way, the tire of the car came off and we crashed hard. It was such a horrible, graphic dream. My mom's leg had been crushed, my dad stuck, etc. Well, I told my mom in the morning and she joked that she'd checked the wheels. She actually must have. She said the car had felt weird and the dream unnerved her. Lo and behold, the tire is loose and needs to be taken to a mechanic. Really weird experience, especially as I've never had a dream feel so real before. Well, you know what they say, with great power comes great responsibility. Now come over to my house and dream up some winning lottery numbers if you would be so kind. Once I walked into my living room from the hallway, saw my mum in the kitchen pouring a bowl of something fully clothed, important to the story, and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" She ignored me, put something in the fridge, and walked into her room. I figured she didn't hear me and walked into my room. Not even 2 minutes later, she walks into my room, soaking wet, in a towel, and tells me she had fallen asleep in the bathtub and had just woken up. Weirdest crap ever. That sounds pretty believable, actually. Year 3 or 4 at school in the UK, so I'd have been like 7 or something. Anyway, at the end of school we all had to line up in our year groups in the yard and we would be led by our teacher to the front of the school and either onto the bus or picked up. The pathway from the back to the front of the school was narrow, so all single file. I was walking along, chatting and laughing with my peers in front and behind of me. Next thing I know, I'm stood on the path, completely alone. The teacher comes running back from around the front of the school and says, "Greg, hurry up, you'll miss the bus." I'd literally missed/skipped a few minutes of time. I've always remembered it. The answer is simple, my friend. We are nothing more than sleeping slaves. Diavolo is doing whatever he be doing in Italy and using King Crimson all over the goddamn place. But in all seriousness, this has happened to me as well. I've blanked out going from point A to B and had no recollection of my journey to point B. It's something that happens. People just go on automatic sometimes. But it certainly doesn't change how jarring it can be. Not the strangest, but the most recent. Early last month, I went online to pay a bill, like I've done for years. I get to the last page before finishing and the web page freaks out, with a multitude of display issues before finally receiving an error message. After several attempts to pay, I give up, assuming the site is having issues. I go back 2 days later and pay my bill, and it goes through normally, with me getting my usual text and email notifying me I paid. I'm very confused a few weeks later when I check my email and find a notice from the company whose bill I paid with a semi-threatening email saying the bill is due that day and do I need to set up a payment plan. I've been dealing with the company for almost a decade and have never been late in paying. I check my credit card account and there's no record of me paying, nor are the text or email I received still in my records. I pay the bill and chalk it up to a senior moment on my part. Last week I got my one credit card bill. It says I never paid my last bill, so now I've got that bill to pay plus the interest. I find my previous bill open but with the invoice in place in my living room. Here's why I'm posting. I'm physically disabled and can't drive, and I always pay that credit card bill in person after they messed up my payment years ago. A family member always takes me to my credit union to pay that bill, and like me, he remembers us going down to pay the bill. They say I never paid. He and I even remember a conversation we had on the way to the credit union and going grocery shopping afterwards, but yet the bill is unpaid and the bill is in my possession still. I don't know what to say except that credit card unions can be tricksy little rats. We'll call them rats. In my area, there are apiaries. An old girlfriend and I were driving down a backcountry road exploring the area, and we both saw an old lady in dark clothes tending to a few beehives in an open field not far from the road, maybe 50 yards or so from the road. She was covered in bees. I slowed down, the bees covered the woman, And then the bees all flew away and the lady was gone. There was nowhere she could have vanished to or hid, and we both saw it happen. Answer: that was no little old lady tending that beehive, that was the pain from Metal Gear Solid 3. When I was 23, I went to a week's workshop with uni abroad to Barcelona. The workshop was based in an obscure part of the city, and I always thought I'd never be able to find that area again. Fast forward about 15 years, I score a job in Barcelona. Get off the plane, go to the hotel near my new office, and it's across from said workshop. I worked there for 3 years, and when that job ends, I move country again for about 5 years. About a month ago, I was invited to an interview for a job, which I'm now in the process for. And guess where the offices are? Yep, around the corner from the workshop that I thought I'd never find again. It's got me wondering if it's coincidence or should I just move to that area until I work out why the universe keeps sending me there. This is probably my favorite one so far. The universe just sending you back to a specific place, like in another country regularly, is just kind of cool. Woke up one morning, went into the living room, and there was a pile of at least 100 maggots in the middle of the living room. Fat fuckers, too. No idea where they came from, or perhaps more disturbingly, what they had eaten to get that size. Well, that would certainly freak me the hell out if it was the first thing I woke up to in the morning. Wife and I were driving out of Texas to come back home to Ohio. We stop at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. Kind of a run-down little place. Wife goes in while I'm filling up. I finish and pay at the pump and decide to head in and use the restroom real quick. I walk out and the wife is at the checkout paying. Wall up and the guy just starts looking at me and then calls me out by my full name. Lieutenant? Yeah? Your name is Lieutenant Drinks-A-Lot, right? Yeah? Do we know each other? Nope. Then how do you know my name? I don't know. Wife and I look at each other and we both get the hell out of there. I don't have a common name. I had never been to that gas station, let alone that town in Texas, ever. Every time my wife and I think about it, we can't explain it. Now, I've never worked a register, but I think that maybe when he paid to fill it up, it may have come up with his name if he paid by card at the pump, so the dude just took a shot in the dark and was like, oh, this is that dude. I don't know how he'd know that he's a lieutenant, unless I know that you can get different titles on your debit and credit cards and whatnot, so I don't know if lieutenant is an option that you can have or something. It's the most rational explanation I can come up with, that's for sure. After a bath, I went to put clothes on, blacked out and woke up on the floor, sitting upright against the sink and dressed. I have no idea what happened. I didn't feel sore anywhere like if I had fallen over, and it was as if I sat on the floor and dressed myself while I was unconscious. Felt like 20 minutes had passed, even though the bathroom still had steam in it. Kinda just shrugged it off, but I'll still think about it. You probably just got up too fast, you silly cow. I'm not the kind of person to have a great many friends, but those friends I do keep are sacred to me. So one evening, I'm getting out of a Rotterdam subway to go to my apartment near there when I see an old friend, one I haven't seen in the flesh in a few years, heading into the subway. I call out his name. He turns, waves, and makes this call me gesture. Then the doors close and subway rides off. 30 seconds later, my phone rings. It was my friend who told me he'd just seen me getting the normal train he'd used to get home from the bar. Apparently, I had grinned, waved, gestured call me, the doors shut, and the train drove off. I lived in Rotterdam, he lived in Enschede. Well, looks like more doppelganger shenanigans are afoot. In high school, I remember going to English and the teacher did roll call. She called my name and I raised my hand and said, I'm here. Then she stopped, saying, so he's not here then. My friend and I laughed because I was obviously here. Figured she was messing with me. That night, my mom got a call telling her I wasn't at class today. I was actually marked as absent. I go back to school the next day and tell my friend, Mrs. English teacher actually freaking counted me as absent. And he said, why wouldn't she? Thought to myself, you're not funny. But I just let it slide because I thought again I was being messed with. Then one of my friends sits down and asks, you feeling better today? Or were you just playing hooky? I was so confused. Then I go to my first hour and that teacher hands me the work I supposedly missed from that day. I looked in my bag and had the same stuff, guide and assignments already there. To this day, I don't know if I missed that day of school or not. I like to think that the teacher and the students, your friends, were conspiring against you to mess with you really badly. About a couple years ago, a friend sent me a video and he asked if I had a lost twin somewhere. It was a video made by amateur actors from the city I used to live in. There was this girl that looks just like me. She talked just like me, and her part on the sketch consisted of telling a joke I used to tell at the time. I was freaked out of my mind. For some stupid reason, I deleted that video and I haven't been able to find it anywhere. And God knows I spent an embarrassing number of hours trying to confirm it even existed in the first place. I kept this one in just as an example of a stupid one that I absolutely don't believe. And believe me, there are already a few that I'm very skeptical of, but some of them are pretty cool. Senior year of high school, 30-minute lunch. My buddy and I drove all the way from my school to McDonald's, normally about a 10-minute drive, so 20 minutes minimum there and back. But we stopped by my house in between the school and McDonald's. I grab a shirt, change, leave, drive down the street, get into an altercation with a guy who we flipped off for tailgating. A shooty bang bang is pulled. We think he was across the street. Looked like a shooty bang bang, but who knows? His wife in the passenger seat starts yelling at him. We part ways. Go to McDonald's and order food, eat in the parking lot, decide we are late regardless. We had no access to the time in my car and our phones were in our lockers at school. We also were frequent ditchies or tardy kids. Turns out this all occurred in 18 minutes on the dot. It's freaking impossible, but it happened. My buddy and I still talk about it to this day, saying we went through a wormhole or some crap. Or my Nissan, rest in peace, somehow could time travel or slow down time. Time-traveling Nissan is not nearly as cool as a time-traveling DeLorean. I was at a gas station getting a coffee. I absolutely love gas station coffee, and this was somewhere I always stop before heading to work. I went to pay for my coffee and I tapped my card. The lady at the till tells me it was declined. I try inserting it with my PIN because maybe my tap wasn't working. The lady said it was declined again. There was no one else in the gas station at that time, so I'm like, hold up, let me check my online banking. Because I'd just gotten paid and I knew I had money. I go to my online banking and it says that I paid. I show her the transaction and she starts insisting that it didn't go through on her end. Like, okay lady, I'm not paying for the same coffee twice. Next day, I go in to grab another coffee and the lady tells me that I stole the coffee the other night, but doesn't make me pay for it. I am angry because I just got a lecture when I know the money for the coffee came out of my account. I checked my online banking later and there was no transaction for the coffee. Not so much a glitch in reality as it is a glitch in your bank account. Biking back from school one day with a friend and we were talking when suddenly I got a really strange case of déjà vu. I remembered the exact moment as if it had happened once before and knew what he was going to say next. Then he said it. Nothing mind-blowing, but more than 14 years later, I still can't explain it. See, I would explain that by saying that the friend was probably talking about something that you were only passively listening to before, but now that you were actually focused and subconsciously aware of what they were talking about before, you kind of knew what they were going to say next. This happened to me several years ago while I was living in California and working a great job in a downtown coffee house. I loved everything about that job. I worked with fantastic people and our shop was located in the city's historic district in a very old, very beautiful building that had once been a hotel in the 1800s, but had since been converted into apartments, lofts, and of course, the big coffee house on the main floor. Being an early birdie and living only a couple blocks away from the coffee house, I was always scheduled to work the opening shift, which started at 4:15 a.m. It was the most unpopular shift, but it happened to be my absolute favorite one because I loved walking to work in the quiet of the early mornings as the rest of the city was sound asleep. Normally, downtown was quite loud and busy, full of people and constant activity, but in the early hours of the morning, it was still and silent, and I felt as if I was the only person in existence walking through a ghost town. Every day, I arrived 10 or 15 minutes early for my shift and would wait for my manager on the patio outside of the shop. It was always just the two of us working that early shift, and my manager was often running a little bit behind and never arrived before I did. But I didn't mind at all. I liked to spend some time by myself on the patio outside of the darkened shop, gathering my thoughts while I waited for him to walk up with his keys to unlock the door. One morning as I was walking to work and approaching our building, I noticed that the coffee house was brightly lit up as all the lights were already turned on and shining through the store's giant glass windows. I was about 10 minutes early that morning, so I was very surprised to see that my manager had arrived before me and had already started opening up the shop. I walked up to the glass door and pulled on the handle to let myself in, only to find that it was locked shut. That wasn't really unusual, as we often kept the doors of the employee entrance and main entrance locked while we got everything ready for the day and went through our morning procedures until 5 a.m., which was our official opening time. What was unusual, though, was the sound of music I could clearly hear drifting through the speakers inside the store. This was during the holiday season, so we were playing Christmas music throughout the day, but on this particular morning, I could could hear the Christmas music already playing its familiar loop at a rather high volume inside the store. This was during the holiday season, so we were playing Christmas music throughout the day, but we never turned it on until around 9 or so in the morning, out of respect for all of the tenants living in the apartment above us. But on this particular morning, I could hear the Christmas music already playing its familiar loop at a rather high volume inside the store. I thought it was odd, but decided that maybe my manager was just feeling extra festive that day and wanted to listen to some tunes while we worked. I knocked on the employee's entrance door and waited for my manager to come and let me in. I looked through the glass and watched for him. He didn't come, so I knocked again and waited some more. He still didn't appear, so I knocked again and again. I then walked to the main entrance door and tried knocking on those with no luck. I checked my watch and saw that I had 5 minutes until I needed to clock in. I knocked again, much louder this time, and looked inside through the glass door for any signs of my manager. And that's when I heard the muffled sound of voices coming from the back of the store, where the kitchen of our coffee shop was located. At that quiet, early hour in the morning, every sound seems to be amplified, and what I could distinctly hear was 2 male voices talking and laughing together. That was very unusual, as I had mentioned before that it was normally just me and my manager who opened up the shop. But I figured someone had probably just needed to pick up an extra shift. I knocked yet again and continued to listen to the sounds coming from the coffee shop. The men kept talking and laughing loudly. They seemed to be having a really great time. In addition to the music and the talking and the laughter, I began to hear the sound of clanging dishes and also the sprayer of the 3-compartment steel kitchen sink being turned on and off, which was very, very unusual, as there would be no dishes to wash before the store had even opened. I was also confused as to why the manager and whoever was with him were in the kitchen in the back of the store, because so much of our opening procedures, setting up the pastry cases, brewing the coffee, preparing everything for the espresso machine, were done at the front of the store, where I was waiting to be let inside. At this point, I was getting a bit irritated, as I was supposed to start work in just a few minutes, and I needed to punch in on our time clock. I hated clocking in late for work. I dug out my phone and dialed my manager's cell number. He didn't pick up, so I dialed the number to our coffee shop instead, and the 2 phones inside the shop, one in the back office and one up the front by the register, started ringing. Once, twice, 3 rings and no answer. Now 4 rings and 5. I hung up and I immediately dialed again, annoyed that they were making such a racket in there with the music and all the talking and the laughter that they probably couldn't even hear the phone at all. Just as before, nobody answered. I hung up and redialed the store for a 3rd time. The phone rang and went unanswered, and so I banged on the door yet again to no avail. I looked at my watch, and I was officially late for work. As I was standing in the front of the locked door with my phone against my ear, becoming more and more irritated, I noticed a pair of headlights reflecting in the glass rolling up behind me. I turned around and saw something I did not expect at all. It was my manager. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said as he climbed out of the driver's seat and shut his car door and hustled up to the shop's entrance. "I tried to get here as fast as I could," he said as he moved towards me and fumbled with his keys trying to find the one to the shop door. "You're mad," he said. "I can tell. I'm really sorry." Completely confused, I put my phone away and turned to head into the store with him, and that's when I lost my breath for a minute. The coffee shop was totally dark. None of the lights were on, not a single light, and it was dead quiet. The Christmas music had stopped, and so had the voices and laughter. All of the loud noise had disappeared. Every sound I had been listening to just seconds before had suddenly vanished. "I promise I'll be here on time tomorrow," my manager said as he fits his key into the lock. "I'll even be early. You'll be shocked." Little did he know that I could not possibly be more shocked to see him than I was at that very moment, as he opened the door to the silent, completely empty coffee house. Perhaps another individual with a deep love for creative writing.
Fast food workers, what should we never order from you? At Starbucks, don't order something from the secret menu. We don't know what a snickerdoodle frappuccino is, as it's not a menu item. Employees would be more than happy to make you a drink if you just explain the recipe rather than the name of it. I'll make you diabetes in a cup if you just tell me what you want in there. Just don't get mad at me for not knowing a whole menu customers created. Salads from DQ are a ripoff. They just recently downsized them while changing the bowl to make it look like the same amount. Over $5 for 3 ounces of old lettuce, cabbage, carrots, and even older grilled chicken. I used to work at Chipotle and never, ever, ever order the tacos. You get less than half the regular portions. Instead, order a bowl with whatever you want in it, then ask for the taco shells, hard or soft, on the side. When I was there, the shells were free to get on the side. I used to work at 7-Eleven, so I'm going to say any of the taquitos or hot dogs around midnight up through about 4 or 5 a.m. Around midnight, you can be almost assured that these are now high mileage. The hot dog might have more miles than your car. If you're really short on time, don't count on chicken tenders or grilled chicken sandwiches or salads being made quickly at Burger King. I remember that the tenders took forever to cook, and we didn't really make them that often, so most times they were made to order. Same for the grilled chicken. I work at Buffalo Wild Wings. Don't get anything other than the wings. That's the only quality thing there. Everything else is frozen. I worked at an Auntie Anne's Pretzels, and typically at these, there's a window and people can see you rolling the pretzels. I want to point out for us that it was more sanitary to not use gloves over using them. We'd get customers complain about it, but it's actually written in our rules that we don't have to use them. It's perceived to be cleaner. When we didn't use them, we washed our hands much more often, and it didn't matter anyway because bacteria got killed off in the 600-degree Fahrenheit ovens. From after the oven and onwards, no hands are involved, and you're using tongs to transfer product around to pretzel sleeves. The only thing I can say is that sometimes the pretzel dogs or hot dogs can be icky when you don't order one fresh. When they sit in the warmer, they shrivel up and get all chewy. If you see something on the menu and can't find at least 1 or 2 other items that the ingredients could be used in, don't order it. For example, my restaurant has a pulled pork sandwich. We don't use the pork for anything else. Since it's not ordered too frequently, it's not fresh, and the product you're eating might be days or weeks old. It's not going to get you sick, but it definitely won't be as fresh as the other things on the menu. I worked at a Japanese casual fast food restaurant, and we had this thing called a volcano roll. It cost $7.25. A California roll there cost $3.75. The volcano roll was a Cali roll cut in the shape of a triangle and topped with spicy mayo that had been heated up, with about 10 cents worth of fish. Literally just a few bits. You're much better off ordering a Cali roll and paying the extra 50 cents for the spicy mayo on the side and asking them to heat it up. I had one guy come in with his girlfriend and ordered a volcano roll, and when served in the restaurant, unless they ask us, we put it on top so it looked nice, like a volcano. When I brought it over, he was like,
"Oh, I didn't know you guys put the sauce on. I've only gotten it for pickup and the sauce is always on the side. I don't really like it. Could you bring me one without one?"
I tried not to laugh and said sure. I went back and the sushi chef asked what was wrong. I told him that he didn't like the sauce and wanted one without it. He laughed and said all right, so he took a Cali roll, cut it up, and put it on a plate. I brought it back to the guy and he was super pumped. Basically, this guy paid $7.25 for a roll that would have cost him $3.75, and me and the sushi chef got to split a free volcano roll. Do movie theaters count? I'd say pretty much everything is fair game unless your manager is a jerk. We rotate hot dogs regularly, throw out the ones that have expired, and put new ones out. Nachos can get pretty iffy if the day's been slow. Sometimes we'll have the same nachos in a warmer that have been there since that morning. Jimmy John's. If you're trying to order a healthy option, don't order the Gourmet Veggie Club. It's the second highest calorie sandwich behind something called the Gargantuan. 8 slices of provolone cheese will do that. I used to work at McDonald's. There have been some McDonald's life hacks going around the internet for a few years now. Please don't do any of them because then one or both of the following will happen. 1, your order will take forever. Yes, I get that you want fresh fries, but are you really willing to wait the 4 minutes for that? And if you are, do you promise not to complain about the wait? Or number 2, you'll be upcharged for certain ingredients, like the poor man's Big Mac, a McDouble with mac sauce and shredded lettuce. We upcharge you 30 cents for the mac sauce and 20 to 30 cents for the shredded lettuce. I used to work at Boston Market. They're pretty good. The only thing I can think of is that any chicken that isn't on the bone, sandwich, pot pie, etc., is day-old or more leftover chicken. Anything off of a hidden menu. Most people working don't know how to make it, and you'll probably receive a giant glob of assorted ingredients on a bun. Chick-fil-A. Don't order grilled foods if you're gluten-free. While technically gluten-free, a lot of cross-contamination can occur. Be specific to be safe. Oh, and don't order a standard salad at night. It was probably made that morning. Request something else on it and it'll be fresh. My brother's girlfriend used to work at Wendy's, and a saying there about fries was, "They aren't old until they're sold." Don't order any type of fish. I work in a popular fast food place near the ocean, and to make our fish, we grind up all the remains. Eyes, fins, scales, hearts, lungs, things like that, and just make them into fried patties. Ex-Sonic employee here. Don't order steak or grilled chicken ever. Don't get the new ultimate chicken sandwiches. They're insanely overpriced, and the normal crispy chicken sandwiches taste way better anyway. The time to get fresh food is when the place is busy, as they're less likely to give you something that's been in hold for an hour, or their hold will continually be fresh. If there's a sale going on for something like half-priced hot dogs or half-priced burgers, only order a reasonable amount if you want quality. If someone orders 20 burgers in the middle of a rush on half-price burger day, we don't care. We'll throw that together so sloppily you'll barely be able to call it a burger. This doesn't apply to half-price corn dogs, however, as we're able to just make a bunch at a time anyway. Don't get the chili. It comes in a bag, gets warmed up in a metal tub, and then sits for 10 hours until we run out and replace it. It's also just not very good to begin with. Try the seasoned popcorn chicken. The barbecue and garlic parmesan flavors are actually really good. If you're allergic to any kinds of foods, be wary. Onions are in the same dressing station as the rest of the condiments, and cross-contamination is not our problem. The same goes for peanuts with the shakes. If you're getting a milkshake, be aware that there are 3 different kinds, and therefore 3 different prices. There's the normal shakes, the master shakes, and the new creamier shakes. The creamier shakes are actually good, just don't get the lavender one. And if you're getting a slushie, the same thing applies, only it's normal slush, candy slush, and real fruit slush. If you're at a stall and the card reader isn't working, just wait for the car hop to come out and give them your card. Don't call in again to ask why the card reader isn't working. And don't hit on the car hops. It's a crappy job and they have to put a smile on whenever they have to deal with you. They're not smiling because they like you, and if they do want to flirt with you for whatever reason, they'll make it very clear. Sonics are dirty as well, at least in the region where I worked. We were continually understaffed and expected to run the entire place with a small crew and clean. We do the best we can, but we don't get paid enough to stay after our shift and work off the clock cleaning up. It sucks, but that's the way it goes. When I used to work there in Canada, McDonald's grilled chicken could sit there for a long time. So can the fillet of fish. Usually they're on top of it, but things happen. Don't be afraid to order those fresh if you're worried it might be stale. Same with regular burger patties. They take like 40 seconds, it's no big deal. I've done a 4-hour shift and just forgot to throw out the old grilled chicken and make new ones because no one ordered it, and it had already went past the timer when I got there, so there was no beeping to remind me. It sounds stupid, and it was. We're all human and humans are dumb though. What you should order is fresh grilled chicken. I used to time the grilled chicken for my breaks because it was just that good. Personally, I think the fillet of fish is disgusting at McDonald's, but that's just my opinion. Don't order anything at around the time the menu switches. Everything will be old. And there's an hour where they take the whole system down in the middle of the night. Don't know if everyone does this, but mine did. And you're gonna end up in a long line and pay only cash. I'm a general manager for Taco Bell. Order anything you like at my store. My team and I take pride in giving you quality product. All I ask in return is this. If you want 2 or more Taco 12 packs, please don't order it in the drive-thru. Come inside. I won't deny your 48 Doritos Locos Tacos, but we will all judge you. Drive-thru is meant for quick orders, not to feed your soccer team. Thanks. As someone who's worked fast food for a while, don't go through the drive-thru unless you can't avoid it. If you have all your kids buckled in and it's a hassle, then it's fine, go on through. But if you're just by yourself, try and take the extra minute it takes to get out of your car. You'll usually have your food quicker, even if you're getting it to go, and you have a better chance of not being given the crappy old fries, chicken, or meat patties. For pizza, don't order any pizza that has fresh exotic veggies, unless that joint is not selling only pizza. Exotic veggies include but aren't limited to artichokes, silver beet, broccolini, and the likes of unusual tomatoes. At Sonic, if you order only drinks, it'll get delivered faster. Also, combo meals take high priority. During a rush, don't go through the drive-thru. Ice cream takes forever to make. If we give you the wrong item or make a mistake, keep your receipt and we'll give you a free replacement meal. I work at Jimmy John's, and my answer is that everything is always fresh unless you have a terrible manager. And if that happens, corporate shuts you down immediately. Our meats are sliced in the shop and are always refrigerated. And even then, they're sliced the day before most of the time. Same with the veggies and such. The real trick is knowing how to order your sandwich and save money. The Jimmy John's menu is specifically created to squeeze money out of its customers' pockets when you don't know how to order. Subway worker here. A Veggie Delight, Kids Pack, or anything on wheat bread. The Veggie Delight doesn't have anything terribly wrong, it's just the same price as all the other subs. Seems like a waste to me. Even if you're vegetarian, there must be better options out there. For the Kids Pack, that thing is expensive. The 4-inch sandwich for your kid with 1 slice of meat costs the same as the 6-inch I could give you with a drink, with 4 slices of the same meat. The regular brown bread gets dry fast. If it's fresh, all the bread is good. Coming down to the end of the day, run from the sandpaper wheat bread. Ironically though, the bread that seems to stay freshest longest is the honey oat wheat bread. Not sure why. Things I do recommend, change your sandwich to a salad bowl. It's a pain for us to make, so I may regret this, but you get way more bang for your buck. Lastly, never order the roast chicken. It's alright, but I do guarantee there's some specialty chicken going for a cheaper price. And to be honest, all we do is add the various sauces to the roast chicken. So it's basically the same thing, just cheaper and usually with juice. And as an add-on, Subways are really good with food prep and all that. They always keep it fresh, replace things on time, and actually throw out what they shouldn't keep. Others get limited funding and have to make them stretch. A good indicator is the cookies. Every Subway bakes them fresh first thing in the morning. If you walk in and there are some that look slightly older than the others, then that's because they are. Lower your standards if you plan to visit an all-you-can-eat buffet when there aren't many people inside. The food has probably been sitting there for a while since nobody was there to eat it. I can't explain how many times I've gone to a buffet, seen nobody inside, and tasted the stale consequences of my poor judgment calls. I worked at Red Robin for a summer a few years ago. I'm not gonna lie, they were insanely particular about cleanliness, and I actually left that job with more appreciation for Red Robin than when I went in. For example, we had a health inspector come one day. My boss knew about it and didn't tell anyone. When I joked around with him about it later, he laughed and said something like, "Every day's health inspection day. My health inspection." Don't order DQ blizzards with extra sauces. Thanks to the flip it or it's free policy, this means that your now 80% liquid blizzard is almost guaranteed to just slosh out of the cup. At Pizza Hut, everything in the store is frozen when you get to us, so it's all the same quality because it's made as the order comes in. The gluten-free pizza just tastes like absolute garbage for obvious reasons. If you can avoid it, please do. Everything is fresh at Jimmy John's, minus their bread and cookies, sorta. The bread comes frozen and there's quite a process to bake it, but it's all made that day. Anything left over is sold for 50 cents a piece the next day. The cookies are frozen and just thawed, but everything else is fresh. My friend used to work at Wetherspoons, a UK pub chain, and you never want to eat their poached eggs. They come in a plastic cup and they're just popped out and microwaved. Pretty much anything in Wetherspoons is just microwaved crap other than the fish, which she was there some nights breading until 3 a.m. I work at a Domino's and I have some advice. Very rarely do we take notice of no garlic, light or extra buffalo sauce, or well or lightly done. So if you order with any of those things, keep in mind that drivers usually prepare the food and box it out of the oven. Unless specifically told, it's difficult to spot the instructions given by a customer. Personally, I would never eat the brownies, as they're all pre-made and despite being sinfully delicious, are not worth it. The wings are delicious, but usually fall under the same buffalo sauce dilemma. I recommend ordering mild wings instead of hot, as the only difference is the volume of sauce. Premium chicken is a scam. The garlic cups are not the same as what goes on the crust, which is delicious. I would drink a whole bottle if I were ready to die. And gluten-free pizzas are cut with the same pizza cutter unless specified otherwise. Never order more than 2 toppings on a thin crust. The cutter will spread the cheese and whoever prepares it will likely not bother to fix it. Never buy specialty pizzas. Make them yourself in the creator. And lastly, if you saw how the Parmesan bread bites were prepared, I don't think you'd want to eat them anymore. That being said, I make about 15 of them a day and I still eat them. For my Canadian brethren out there, ex-Tim Hortons baker here. I worked the midnight shift at a location that had a high employee turnover rate. Rightly so, as it was always understaffed and underpaid. Here's some tips. Coffee is supposed to be made fresh every 15 minutes. There should be a white marking on the pot indicating when it was last brewed. Look for the marking and make sure it's fresh. Coffee flavor deteriorates really quickly, and we don't mind making you a fresh pot, especially if we messed up and forgot to throw out an old batch. Decaf is hardly ordered in the mornings, so it's likely we'll have to brew a fresh pot or you're getting old product. If you want to order food, do it before midnight, as this is when we throw away the old donuts, buns, and bagels. They're usually sold to farmers who use them in their animal feed. Fresh donuts are usually available at 2 to 3 a.m., maybe earlier if the location is somewhere popular and not understaffed. Maybe later if the people in front are lazy liars who don't want to make food. The general consensus for drive-thru orders is don't order anything more than 4 coffees at most or 2 meals. The people on drive-thru are strictly timed and they get in trouble if they take too long. If you're ordering as a large group, please go inside. Don't make huge orders after 9 p.m. This is the time when the store is most understaffed, and all that's left is usually 1 or 2 people in front and 1 baker. If you see the baker up front or in drive-thru clad all in white, odds are the people in the front are really behind and called them off his or her routine. Forgive us if we get your order wrong and you need to repeat it once or twice. If we take a long time making your order, more than 5 minutes, we usually offer you a free cookie, but don't count on it. Ex-Olive Garden employee here. Everything is horrible for you. Ask a manager to see a nutrition menu and your jaw will drop. The butter that goes on breadsticks comes in the same jugs that motor oil comes in. Liquid form. Basically liquid cholesterol. I know you think you're healthy eating the salad and soup and bread with extra cheese, but you're not. The amount of salt in every soup is unreal. And the salad dressing even has cheese in it. Stay away from anything cream-based, Alfredo sauce, carbonara sauce, etc. Unless you enjoy gut-wrenching poops. Corporate will comp literally anything. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people walk out with twice as much stuff as anticipated, all for nothing. Not a worker, but I ordered a chicken sauce in KFC that wasn't anywhere on the menu, just on the internet. I got a cup with a little of some brown thing that looked, smelled, and tasted like the leftover from deep frying. Do you like flavored lattes? Don't order the Valencia syrup. I used it twice in a year. The bottle was dusty as heck. I don't know the shelf life of latte syrup, but it was old and dusty when I got there. I used to work at Raising Cane's. They only sell a couple things, chicken and fries, so that's always fresh. They were also super clean. I would not order anything with egg whites at IHOP though. A few years back, I went to IHOP with my then girlfriend. She saw on the menu that substituting egg whites for eggs in the omelets and stuff was an option, healthier and lower calories. Now, you have to realize when most people go to IHOP, they're not looking to be healthy. They're looking to set world record calorie and cholesterol levels. So egg whites are probably not ordered often. But my girlfriend was watching what she ate, and she's also the type to always heavily modify the menu. She almost never ordered straight off the menu. So she requests an omelet made with egg whites. The waitress seemed totally confused. In all honesty, I don't think she'd ever heard someone order that before, and she may not have even realized it was an option. She said she would check with the kitchen. She came back a couple minutes later and said the kitchen crew were looking for some egg whites. Then, about 10 minutes after that, she came back and said, "They found some egg whites, but they're going to take a while to thaw out. Do you still want them?" Most people here would say no. Not my then girlfriend. She was like, "Great, thanks." Well, suffice to say, my girlfriend ended up with the worst food poisoning I've ever seen. She was vomiting every 45 minutes for almost 2 days straight. She had to be put on an IV and prescribed this special skin gel that stopped vomiting. It was insane. In all seriousness, for a brief moment, I honestly think she considered that she might die. So the moral of the story is to not order anything at a restaurant that looks like someone never orders it. Jamba Juice here. When I worked there, 2 small 16-size cups equal 1 large power size. People would often come in and ask for their kids to get 2 small smoothies. If it's the same flavor, ask for a power size in 2 cups. Saves you more than $1. Whataburger in Texas and Southwest US area. Order everything. Haven't worked there in a decade, but unless quality has gone to the dumps, it's all worth ordering. Fast food for sure, but the kitchen should be spotless every night when it closes. You'll get diabetes, but not food sickness. Don't order the salads from Burger King. 99% of the time, the lettuce isn't washed. We also just started serving hot dogs not too long ago. They're put in the broiler just long enough to have grill marks, then we toss them in the microwave. So avoid that. Back in the day, I worked for a concessionaire at a major sports arena. NBA, concerts, things like that. The standard rule was never order a hot dog from the concession stand until after the first quarter of the game or after the main act is playing. Why? Well, at the same time, we specialized in a nasty trick called reruns. Reruns were the unsold hot dogs from the night before. When closing up the stand, we were ordered to unwrap the unsold hot dogs, peel the meat from the bun, then take the dogs back to the sink and wash the stuck bread parts off. Now, crunchy buns went in a bag, the now rinsed hot dogs went in another bag. The next day, or week if the team was going on a road trip, the same hot dogs would be brought back out, reheated, and restuffed into those same buns. Those were the ones that were served first. I don't know if this is still happening, but at the time I worked there, reruns were a way of life. Those who worked in the stands hated the practice, but management insisted. We also reran popcorn, pretzels, and ice. Retail workers of Reddit, what's your Black Friday horror story? We had a lady call the police on our store because we sold out of a TV. I really wish I was lying. They came too. I worked at a store that had a service department. They couldn't bring anything up at the service counter, but they had a computer which made it look like a register. A guy was standing there patiently waiting to be rung up. Finally, somebody notices him and asks what he needs. "I'd like to pay," he says. "I'm sorry, this isn't a register," replies the service tech. The guy then proceeds to try and convince the service tech to let him pay because the line for the main registers is 3 hours long. Of course, the service tech couldn't because he didn't have a register. He just had a computer for making appointments and such. So after 15 minutes of argument, the guy moves off to find the line. Here's the fun part. While he was arguing, somebody else saw him standing by something that looked like a register, so got in line behind him. Then, people saw the shorter line and got in behind them. With nobody to control it, the line to nowhere grew quickly. 15 minutes was all it took for the not line to snake all the way around the department. So when the doofus who started this whole fiasco went to find the right line, he found the end of the line that he had started. Then the guy behind him heard that there wasn't a register, so he followed the first guy. Then the next customer followed the second, and so on. They walked around in a circle for an hour before somebody noticed them. We almost had a riot when a manager had to tell 100 people that they weren't in line and had just waited an hour for nothing. That same year, we had several scuffles at points where the register line had forked into 2 lines. From then on, we marked off a huge register path and had several employees just manage the line. I worked at Walmart years ago. One of my managers thought she was being sneaky and swapped my Black Friday off shift with an on at 9 a.m. Normally, my shifts didn't start until 1 and ended at 9. So this was utter bull. I was in the bakery department and had to work all of Thanksgiving the day before, and they ended up needing more help. I came in at 6 a.m. that day and worked a 14-hour shift because most of my team had been given the holiday off. My manager's excuse being, "You're young, they have families they need to be with and kids to celebrate with." So I was pretty angry. I found out that the Black Friday sale was a 65-inch LCD TV and electronics and PS3s. So needless to say, it was going to be a bloodbath. I stayed in my department because there was literally no one else there and caught up on much needed sanitation. When the manager found out before the sale started, she came my way to rain down fire, brimstone, and bull on me. Thankfully, I could use their own stupid policies against them. There needs to be at least one member of the bakery crew on hand to write on cakes, and since I was the only one there, they were out of luck. I avoided all of the Black Friday chaos, got an easy day of work, and the perfect spot to watch all of it unfold, all while screwing over a manager I hated. It was a beautiful day. I work at the largest lingerie retailer in the country. We had a security guard set up for the beginning of Black Friday. A Southern belle mother decided she didn't want to wait in a 50-person deep line and that she would try and cut. Our security guard asked her multiple times to step to the back of the line or leave. She proceeds to ream him with every curse word in the book and ended by threatening him with a gun she had in her bag. This will be my last holiday in retail. My horror story is the customer who took a poop in one of my fitting rooms and then wiped with a $125 polo from Ralph Lauren. Nothing more needs to be said. I worked for a Gulf superstore as a cashier. Black Friday customers come rushing in and the line starts. I proceed to scan the first item and nothing. The registers are completely down and the lines are growing fast. The only thing we could do is take every transaction manually, write down SKUs, calculate tax, and use the old credit card swipers for 3 hours. I never worked retail during Black Friday again. The store is absolutely packed and a larger trailer trash looking woman gets up to the register with 4 coffee machines, about 30 different pieces of clothing, clearly none of which would fit her, and a set of pots and pans and a blender. I'm at the register serving a line of, at this point, probably 20 people. She gets to my register and I ring everything up. Total comes out to about $200, because most of the stuff she's getting is cheap that we sell even cheaper on Black Friday. Of course, as soon as I tell her the total, I'm wrong. So is the register apparently.
You double scanned most of it. It should be half that price.
No, I didn't, lady. Learn to count. I wish I could say that to her, but my manager is literally right behind me on the other register and would chew me out like no tomorrow. So in my nicest tone of voice, I reply, I don't believe I did. You can even see it right here on the register. If you really want me to, I can start over to make sure nothing's scanned more than once though. Of course, she ignores the whole thing and just tries to pay. She's clearly not been to the store before, because our old register system requires us to take your card and swipe it ourselves. She spends a few seconds looking around for where she can scan her card, and I chime in, we have to scan it up here, ma'am. System is too old for us to have something where you scan the card. I'm so sorry about that. She's already angry enough and trying to fight with me about scanning it herself. Finally, after spitting in my face for a few seconds while I'm forced to smile like the brain-dead monkey corporate thinks I am, she hands me the stupid card. I check the name because legally we have to, and we have to see ID as well. Well, I see the card and immediately expect chaos, because the first name on it is David. She hands me her ID and lo and behold, her name ain't David. I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't legally charge this card. Unless David is with you, in which case I'd need to see his ID.
Are you kidding me? This is my son's card. He's letting me use it. He's at home with my husband.
Oh, lovely. As if this wasn't bad enough already. I'm sorry, I can't swipe this card unless it's yours. Do you have a different card on you with your name on it? After grumbling for a bit, she finally hands over a different card. Go through the normal motions and the card is declined. Great. How can this get any worse? Your card was declined, ma'am. Cue me getting screamed at in front of an ever-growing impatient live audience.
Let me talk to your manager.
At this point, I can only pray that hell itself will swallow this demon up or at least end me so I don't have to deal with it. My manager turns around from her register and says, just a moment, ma'am, I'm just finishing up this transaction, then I'll be right with you. Of course, this little old lady ain't got the time for that. At this point, I'm pretty sure my line at the register should be paying me for the entertainment they'll get out of this lady unloading all of her crazy on me. My manager finally turns around and has me switch to her register for the time being while she handles the crazy. I manage to get a few people through the register while I hear screaming coming from both sides, as my manager isn't great with being yelled at. I get a few comments and looks from customers basically saying, I'm so sorry, we're not all terrible, I promise. Finally, I hear the woman over there yell that she'll put all of her stuff back and go shop somewhere else. Thank God. Turns out that's not what she did. Instead, she ended up going to the exit on the other side of our department and trying to walk out with everything in the cart. My manager sees this and calls loss prevention, and so does the cashier on the register down there. Loss prevention sends some of their guys over to her and they try and stop her after calling the police. Now, I didn't get to leave the register because we were packed, but I was told she tried to fight a few of the people from loss prevention before the cops got there. Ended up with her getting arrested. The rest of my day sucked anyway, but that made it a bit better. When I worked at Best Buy, I watched 2 elderly ladies get into a fist fight over a Nintendo DS. That and cleaning the aftermath of Black Friday looked like a grocery store before a hurricane. When I was 15, I got my first actual job. It was at a clothing store and my first day was Black Friday. I thought it wouldn't be a big deal because I was hired for men's formal wear. When I show up at 4 a.m., my manager tells me I'm working women's shoes today only. Absolute madness. The worst part is shoe salesmen get commission, but since I didn't have employee numbers, I got only minimum wage, losing out on hundreds of dollars of extra pay. Pretty sure they did that on purpose. I worked at Walmart during Black Friday about 12 to 13 years ago. The hot items that year were $10 DVD players and trampolines. The DVD players were stacked on 2 tables near the registers, and the trampolines were in sporting goods. I'm walking to the receiving area in the back, and someone from Sporting Goods asks if I can grab a U-boat or L-cart to load up the last trampoline. I had to go all the way to grocery to get one, and as I'm coming back, someone asks about an item. So I walk 2 feet away from my cart, and some woman grabs it and runs towards Sporting Goods. I get there, and the woman and husband are loading up the trampoline, and it wasn't even for them. The other lady that had it and purchased it, had the receipt and all, just needed to carry out, said, "Hey, that's mine!" And the husband got in her face and said, "What are you gonna do about it?" They started to walk off, and I was shocked at that point. And the husband looked at me and said, "What's your problem?" I just smiled and told the sporting goods guy to call management. The husband then said, "Run, honey!" And they booked it to the front. They made it out of the store with the trampoline, too. Then I get to the front near the $10 DVD players. One older woman grabs the last one left on one of the 2 tables. Another lady grabs the same one. They scuffle. One lady decks the other one into the other table full of $10 DVD players. They all fall over and she runs, never dealing with that again. When I was in school, I worked at Walmart for the holidays. They had a fun agreement where if you worked Thanksgiving 6 p.m. until Black Friday morning 6 a.m., you didn't have to come in Black Friday. Fun, right? So after Thanksgiving lunch with my boyfriend's family at 4 p.m., I headed to work where I put on an oversized yellow smock with a blue sun on it. I was put in charge of 70-inch plasma screen television vouchers. I was given 7 vouchers to distribute at 8 p.m. so customers could go to the register, pay for the television, and have it loaded into their car around back. So problems arose very quickly. A line for the 70-inch TV began as I started my shift at 6 p.m. As soon as 7 people formed a line, I had to turn people away. At 8 p.m., the vouchers were distributed. Customers 1 and 2 were husband and wife. They were an older couple who brought camping chairs to wait for their 2 vouchers. Here's where the mess started. Customer 8 approaches me for a voucher. I tell him that they've all been distributed and he was free to come back within the hour to see if anyone surrendered their voucher. He then becomes visually distressed and angry, to which there was nothing I could do. In comes customer 1 from before, the older man from the couple. He offers to sell his voucher to customer 8 for what was close to the price of the on-sale television that had not been purchased. Customer 8 agrees reluctantly and pulls out the money in exchange for the television voucher. The older couple then walks off with not only Mrs. Customer 2's television voucher, but also the newly acquired cash to buy said television at the register. In comes customer 9, who addresses me very angrily with, "Hey you, aren't you gonna do something about that?" while gesturing wildly at the older couple who totally scored and the poor guy who essentially paid double for a Black Friday television. I had to let that customer know that what the others did with the vouchers was their business. This guy got way too close to me and one of my coworkers noticed and came to help. The guy then takes off in a huff and claims Walmart cheated him. 2 months later, I quit to work in my licensed field and never looked back. Years later, still no regrets. I don't even like going into the store I worked at. Not retail, but I worked at a restaurant that is right across the street from the mall and open on Black Friday. So naturally, after people get great deals on whatever, they come to eat. Anyways, I'm sitting in back of the house Black Friday morning waiting for my inevitably long shift to start. It was incredibly busy as it was, but I wasn't about to clock in early. I was messing around with one of the managers when I heard a hostess scream through the walkie, "Help! Help!" So I immediately rushed to the entrance to see 2 grown men on the ground fighting, one in nothing but his underwear, and my shift lead trying to pull them off each other while screaming, "Stop! This is a family restaurant! There are children here!" I jolted forward in an attempt to break up the fight. This is where it gets weird. Everyone is gathered around this small area watching or trying to help, when someone grabbed a fire extinguisher and started spraying us with it. So we have a bunch of people trying to break up a fight between a man in his underwear and some other dude, and someone spraying us with a fire extinguisher while we have Christmas carols playing in the background. Finally, we get the fight broken up, cops show up, the whole 9 yards. Guy number 1 got the last TV voucher from Best Buy, and guy number 2 was very angry about that. So he followed him over to the restaurant to try and buy the TV from him. Guy 1 told Guy 2 to screw off, so Guy 2 took off his pants and started to fight Guy 1. My Black Friday 2 years ago was just the opposite of crazy. I used to work in a grocery store, so it was absolutely dead the whole shift. I have never been so utterly and thoroughly bored before or since. I would have killed for some crazy things to happen, just so I could have a chuckle about it the next day. I work at a kids store where almost everything was half off for Black Friday. But the thing is, I normally help moms and grandparents at the register, so I don't see Best Buy style murder over televisions. I get old ladies yelling at my coworkers over the price of smiley face pillows and women bringing in hundreds of dollars worth of clothing and kitty makeup they bought weeks before at full price, just to buy it all back right away at sale price after the return's over. I also had a grandpa shout at me because I told him we were out of bathrobes. Good times. For me, I was working my first job, second week in, and I'm working the floor at a Best Buy on Black Friday. I wasn't great at my job yet, so they had me running people from the line they had set up to different registers and quickly answering questions from customers. No big deal. At about 1 a.m., as I'm running customers back and forth, we hear a commotion on the other side of the store, and a few police officers come in. Turns out, some guy had broken a bit of plastic off of one of the information plaques and tried to use the pointy bit to stab an employee in the neck. I never found out why he did it. Some people are just crazy. I'm so incredibly thankful not to be working retail anymore. When I was working at Walmart, me and another coworker had a lady come in during our Black Thursday sale with her children. She was going around shopping with her kids for a while, but then saw me and my coworker in the bedding department and left her children with us, asking for us to watch them while she went to get some products. Before we were able to tell her no, she disappears and doesn't come back for her kids for 20 minutes. Both of us are just standing there watching her kids slowly freak out and cry for their mother, wondering if she's gonna come back. My supervisor then walks by and sees what's going on, and we filter in. She was quite annoyed with the mother, who by this point has yet to make an appearance. When mom finally showed, her children rushed to her, and my supervisor had a chat with her. Unfortunately, I didn't catch what my supervisor said to her. I worked as a cashier at Target 2 years ago on Black Friday. My particular store opened at 7 on Thanksgiving, and I had to be there from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. I don't know how other stores do it, but for mine, we had vouchers for the big ticket items like the new iPads and huge HD TVs and so on. So there usually wasn't a stampede of people, and the lines to the registers were set up very efficiently, doing all the preparation we can to avoid making it complete chaos. I began to feel hopeful that it would be an okay night, well worth the holiday pay. As the doors were unlocked, I could not have been more wrong. At around midnight, 2 large women come to my register with 4 carts piled with random crap they had coupons for. Just imagine 40 bottles of shampoo, 50 sticks of deodorant, 25 2 liters of soda, etc. All just piled in there. I take a deep breath and begin scanning items. And as I tell them the total, somewhere around $800, one of them pulls out a wad of slightly damp coupons from her bra. Stifling the urge to vomit, I accept them and proceed to scan/attempt to scan roughly 200 coupons. After doing about 20 of them with only 3 or 4 working, I decide to look at the coupons and sort them into expired and non-expired, as well as coupons from other stores that we didn't take. We would take manufacturers' coupons and Target coupons, but we wouldn't take a Bed Bath & Beyond coupon. About 20 minutes later, some coupons were hard to make out because of the dampness, and the ladies insisting I sort through them all, I finalized the tally and proceeded to scan the maybe 30 coupons that were valid or acceptable. The ladies realize that the pile is significantly shorter than it should have been and start complaining to me about the lack of coupons. I explain the situation and continue scanning and then putting them away in the register. The lovely part came when the ladies realized their total was only reduced to around $700. Screaming that I was trying to scam them, the lady demanded I scan all the coupons. I politely explained that I could not scan the majority due to them being expired or unusable at our store. She then asked what discounts I could give her, and when I said that I couldn't give her any besides the normal 5% if she paid with a red card, she began pulling at the neckline of her shirt, asking if there was anything she could do to get a discount. Let me stop here and say that I am partial to the thicker female form, but I'm not particularly attracted to someone who looked like a pregnant Michelin man. So I again politely refused and said if they had any more valid coupons, I would be happy to scan them. Otherwise, their total was X. Now the fun part. The two land whales decide their rights have been infringed upon and begin screaming profanities, prompting the team lead and 2 AP officers to come to my register rather quickly. Upon seeing people who looked in charge, the ladies began telling them how I failed to do my job and things like that. After I told my boss what I did, she agreed with me and said that I was following the store's policy. The ladies then tipped over all 4 carts full of their crap, spilling it all over the aisle, threw change at me and my team lead, and proceeded to waddle out of the store. I quit right then and there, and now I'm loving my job at a bakery. About 6 years ago, I was working at a mall bookstore's cafe. I had the opening shift, which, thankfully, because it was in a mall, was 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Unfortunately, the late shift person called in sick, so I had 2 hours off before a 4 p.m. to close shift. While that sucks, it wasn't the worst part of my day. I actually had a customer who was stalking me and spent the entire day sitting in the cafe reading a book and occasionally coming up to order something new. Anytime I wasn't behind the counter or in the back room, he followed me around, including during my 2-hour shift gap. I didn't dare go to my car on my break because I didn't want him knowing what it looked like, and my manager didn't want to call security on him if he didn't actually approach me. Worst Black Friday ever. Luckily, 2 weeks later, he did approach me while I was working and asked if he could clip my fingernails as a keepsake. That was enough to get him banned from not only the store, but also the mall. My manager also made sure someone walked me to my car for the next few months, so it was all good. Last year, my store had some seasonal cashiers start on Thanksgiving Black Friday, and within the first hour of his first shift, some idiot tried to steal cash out of his drawer and stuff it in his apron. Our AP guy simply walked out of his office and escorted him off the floor until the police arrived without the customers noticing. Parents of Reddit, what is your kid doing or wearing that you hope is just a phase? My 7-year-old saw a ceiling fan installation video on YouTube, and he's now obsessed with ceiling fans. He's gonna ask Santa Claus for 4 new ceiling fans for Christmas. My teenage son is going through the I don't have to shower every day even after rugby practice phase. I've tried to tell him he stinks, but for some reason he thinks I'm crazy. I hope this ends soon. My teenage daughter claims that our family is a communist dictatorship and she has no rights. I sighed and told her it's more like a fascist dictatorship or maybe even a monarchy. He won't shave his beard. He's 17 and it's very thin and long. Reminds me of the first time I saw my own armpit hair when I was in middle school. I'm getting married next week, and I asked him to shave, and he said,
"But Mom, it'll take me like 2 years to grow it back."
So we compromised that he would at least trim it shorter. Lying, but in a really incompetent way. She's nearly 3 and has started trying to get out of doing stuff by making the most outrageous and clearly untrue statements. Like, you can't brush my hair, I haven't got a head. And I can't put my shoes on, I'm a box and boxes don't have feet. And things like that. I try not to just laugh in her face, but it's difficult. My 12-year-old is obsessed with Five Nights at Freddy's. It wouldn't be so bad if every electronic device he got his hands on didn't get a profile or something named after some weird animatronic character. He made 4 new separate user accounts on the netbook that we let him use to play Minecraft. Named them all after FNAF characters. My son is 13. He recently started insisting on tucking his pants, usually sweatpants, into his socks, and pulling his socks up and then wearing sandals. I told him he looks like a pirate with 2 wooden legs. He's a tall, thin stick of a boy. So far, no one else has mentioned it to him, so he thinks I'm just being silly. So my 4-year-old is obsessed with Minecraft. I enjoy it quite a lot also, but I'm really only playing it because he wants to watch. But he keeps wanting me to do creepy things. Like the latest thing he wants me to do is to build tracks and collect all of the villagers into a place and build a machine to kill them. I know they aren't real people or anything, but no, I'm not going to build concentration camps. My son is wearing pull-ups, and if the smell is any indication, he's currently crapping his pants while grunting and telling me right to my face that he doesn't have to go poop. This is getting really old. I have a 14-year-old who is obsessed with socks. He spent like $19 on a single pair of socks. They have to be these Nike Elite gold-plated something something. I hope he grows out of this fast. Crying. Just crying and screaming for hours and hours and hours to the point where I consider taking him to be seen by a doctor. Then, just as I'm about to arrange it, he stops. Then does it again. He's only 5 days old, but I'm already feeling the pressure and stress. So, my 12-year-old son keeps saying that he's a bean boy. At first, I thought it was just a stupid game, but I checked his internet history and it is 85% bean related. I really hope it's just a phase. My 10 and 13-year-old are all hot topic, all the time. As a legit punk kid back in the 80s, this seems wrong to me. My tights were shredded because I was too poor to get new ones. It was just a bonus that they look cool. Hot Topic has some cool things, but I feel like it should be utilized to enhance a look, not to just be a head-to-toe walking marketing ad for their stuff. My 5-year-old is hitting that kindergarten phase where he's stretching his wings, experimenting with independence, and seeing exactly how far he can push his parents before something really bad happens. He'll sneer or glare at you when you tell him not to do something bad. But once you get in his face and tell him in no uncertain terms exactly what'll happen to him if he keeps it up, he starts crying. Can't have it both ways, bud. If you're old enough to run out into the street by yourself and laugh the first time I yell at you about it, you're too old to get out of a punishment by crying like a baby. His sister went through this phase too, and she got over it. Now she's the sweetest, most empathetic, most respectful little thing you could ever dream of raising. I'm sure he'll get there too. My 5-year-old is obsessed with Bowser from Mario Brothers. He talks about him all the time. It's getting old, and I wonder what the other kids in his kindergarten class think. Or maybe they obsess about similar things too. My 3-year-old has just discovered his personal bits and can not only pee in the potty, but if properly angled, can form a fine arc of urine that will land on anything he aims it at, which at the moment tends to be the cat. Yes, my toddler is peeing on the cat, which then runs all over the place, getting it everywhere. Thank you, toddler. Your girlfriends of the future will be hearing all about this. Not my parents, but my brothers hope that listening to rock music is just a phase. I'm a 20-year-old black man. God, please help me. My son has a fedora. Knee-high, neon-colored Nike socks. With shorts, naturally. Elementary school fashion can be mind-boggling. Growling loudly at everything. He's 2.5. Just flew to Orlando from the UK. Funny for the first hour, not so much for the next 8 or so. Minecraft and KSP. Granted, I play a lot of KSP, but I had to buy his own laptop and get it for him because he was messing up daddy's missions. My son has lately become obsessed with designer clothes that I can't afford at all. He's been pestering for a hoodie from some Born by Wolves or something like that, and I can't fathom how any sane person would pay $175 for a hoodie. I hope he grows out of it and starts saving the money I give him instead of spending it irresponsibly like he's doing now. Pull-ups at night. He's gonna be 7, and although most mornings that pull-up is relatively dry, I'm looking forward to never buying another diaper or pull-up again. My 5-year-old is 100% bathroom independent. He just forgets to wipe half the time. He also has a bad habit of waiting until the last possible minute he can hold his pee. This means he either A, unleashes the beast and lets fly, or B, has trouble with his belt and wets himself. Sure, it's sort of fun predicting when the cross-house potty sprint is going to occur, but it cannot be healthy. Pooping in the shower and towing it down the drain. He gets it on the curtains and everything. No idea how he does it. My 12-year-old has been obsessed with yo-yos for a while now. I was afraid he was going to get picked on at school because of it. Turns out he's gotten a bunch of other kids interested in them, enough that they're starting a yo-yo club to teach each other yo-yo tricks. One of their APs is going to help with that part, and the engineering teacher is going to help them design and make yo-yos on the new 3D printers. My son is almost 2 and he loves Dark Souls. Everything about it. He watches speedruns, walkthroughs all day. I've tried to get him to watch little kid programming and he won't. He watches for a whole 2 minutes and then brings me the Xbox controller and says, "Ma, Darsho!" He has swords and shields and he enjoys sword fighting now. If you pretend to stab him with a sword, he'll fall down, then get up and pretend to crush a life gem. The sound effect included. Praise the sun, I guess. I got the perfect one, but it was me. It was a blue blazer that I had painted with flames on the lapel and a skull on the back. Cool idea, a horrible execution. And the jacket was so ratty. Frozen. She has this one dress that she wears, it gets washed, she wears it again, lather, rinse, repeat. We watch that stupid movie almost every day. She's onto her second copy. She has a cape that goes over her regular clothes on the day her dress is being washed. I can repeat the entire script. I'm over Frozen. Not a parent, but my nephew pretty much lives with us, so close enough. He's 5 and is right in the midst of his picky eating stage. It's so annoying because we'll be eating one thing and he'll insist on eating something else. And he's hardcore, so he'll literally starve himself rather than eat what we're eating. So we usually have to give in. But sometimes we're eating a food he likes, but because he doesn't want that food that day, he'll try to claim he doesn't like it.
I don't like pizza though. We ate pizza yesterday. Yeah, but I was just pretending because I don't like pizza. I like pasta.
He's a great kid, polite and kind. But sometimes I want to drop kick him a few miles because he's getting on my nerves. Not a parent, but my 14-year-old brother wore shorts to school the last 2 days with temperatures between 0 to -10 degrees Celsius. My 3-year-old likes to pull his bits out of his pull-up and yell, "Look at my dingle!" I really hope this stops before I send him to daycare. My son is a brony. I just have to keep reminding myself that he's not drinking or doing drugs. Then again, teenagers have been drinking and doing drugs for centuries, and mostly turn out okay. Aspiring to be a magical horse from a show intended for kids half their age? Not sure how that'll turn out. My 7-year-old daughter will be fully dressed inside as though it's snowing and cold. She also refuses to wear matching gloves or socks. Please keep in mind that it's 76 degrees in my house. I guess it's more his attitude, but he's really materialistic and status conscious, at least as much as a 6-year-old can be. He's always comparing his stuff to other people's stuff. I don't really understand where he gets it from, because I'm not like that at all. On the one hand, it's cool if he's willing to work for the nice things he wants. On the other hand, it's not cool if he's just so obsessed that it's taking over parts of his brain, you know? He only wants to play sports that have the most gear, because he likes the gear, not necessarily the sport, and he has to have the nicest shoes. If his friends have some cool thing, he must also have that cool thing. He's the one who leaves the toy store saying, "That's really cool you got me these things, but why didn't you get me this too?" Yes, I've tried putting everything back and leaving the toy store. This just seems to be the way he is right now. He also thinks he's an expert after spending 2 minutes learning about something. That is really infuriating. No, you're not an expert on sharks because we read half of a kid's book on sharks. He also likes to be the best. No, you're not good enough to be in the NHL. You're 6. Okay, yeah, you're a good skater now, but guess what? If you just sit there congratulating yourself instead of practicing, all those other guys on your little league team will blow right by you next year. I mean, I don't say this to him, I just tell him to keep practicing. I don't know what to do anymore. My 9-year-old son really likes sleeveless shirts. My grandma bought him a bunch, and he chooses his daily outfit, which is always a sleeveless shirts with shorts every day. All of the shorts he owns are plaid. It's like he's all preppy on the bottom and hillbilly on the top. I don't care too much because who really gives a crap what their kids wear as long as 1, it's appropriate for the event, and 2, is clean. It's embarrassing to go out in public with him, but screw it, he's happy. I'm 24 and childless, but I really hope my rabbit stops pooping on my sofa soon. Not a parent, but my little brother has been playing a lot of computer games, and instead of using the normal hand configuration, ring finger on A, middle on W and S, and index on D, like a normal person, he uses his index for all 4 keys. It drives me crazy. My 9-year-old daughter dresses in as much black as she can get her hands on, and is flattered when people compare her to Wednesday Addams. She's also very into some YouTube channels that I really don't get, like Miranda Sings, and endless videos of people putting together outfits for different occasions. Which wouldn't be that weird if she didn't try to insist on spending 80% of her life in the same shapeless black schmat. My 6-year-old thinks he's Bruce Lee, and my 9-year-old thinks he's Paul Phoenix. Roughhousing is good, but honestly, they tag team me while I'm asleep. All I hear is, "What-a?" and I'm out cold again. Not a parent, but as a kid, I used to have a Hercules phase after binge watching the Disney movie. Used to take one arm out of my shirt like a toga and walk around with a sword, insisting to be called Hercules. I do miss my toga. Obnoxious YouTube videos. My Little Pony, Shopkins, Minecraft. I don't know how these people get so popular because their voices are downright painful. I truly wonder if Cookie Swirl C keeps friends with her fakey little girl voice. She has to be in her early 20s. I want an interview where she's asked, "What do people say when they find out your YouTube is all about you playing with kids' toys?" My daughter is obsessed with death. She's 9 and will ask hypothetical questions such as, "If this ferry sank, how many people would die?" Or, "Are there sharks in these waters? How many people have been eaten?" She seems to have toned it down a little bit in the last few months at least. I am so sick of Caillou and Daniel Tiger, these whiny little brats. But she's 5, and it's nice that she's not watching gender-driven drivel or wants to watch stuff with material that's too mature for her. My 7-year-old keeps making giant monoliths in Minecraft for Lego characters. His village worships a 400-foot Emmet. House full of 15-year-old girls, and they all call each other, and me sometimes, bruh. It's like they aren't even trying to finish a whole word. They gave up in the middle of it. Crocs. My 8-year-old has a hand-me-down pair. 4-year-old was dying for a pair like her big sis. Then 2-year-old wanted some too. Next thing I know, my husband will want a pair. And divorce is just too expensive. Hoping the Crocs phase goes away soon. She likes to drop her pants, shake her butt at me, and sing, "Botswana, Botswana!" She's nearly 6. At least she only does it at home. My daughter likes to sleep during the day when I'm awake, and then fuss and not want to go to sleep at night when mom is tired. She's a month old, but I can't wait until we get her schedule all figured out. My 2-year-old marches around the house with T-Rex arms and growls at us. She'll also chase us around the house while planning to be a dinosaur. Scares the crap out of other kids who come over to visit. Now that I think about it, she learned it from me, so might not be growing out of this one. My 13-year-old daughter judges everyone who is the least bit different from her, and is incredibly annoyed by almost everyone and everything. I'm really hoping she'll quickly learn to just stop caring. My teenage daughter is dating a girl, which I completely support. I'm just surprised. I just wish she would change because I have no clue how to deal with it. Do I treat her girlfriend like I would a boyfriend? Not allowed in my daughter's room, not allowed out late, etc.? Or do I let her run wild like I do when she's out with her other female friends? It seems wrong to treat her differently than the other girls, but at the same time, I don't want my daughter doing things she's too young for. This would be so much easier if it were a phase, or if she were already an adult. I could just be like, "Hey, that's awesome," and move on. Instead of getting up and going to the bathroom in the middle of the night, my 4-year-old pops a squat right beside her bed and pees all over the floor. I make her clean it up every time, yet she still does it. Roblox on my gaming PC. He's 11 and always goes back to Roblox. I don't get it. I have a huge Steam library, but I can't get him to play anything else. When my daughter gets upset, annoyed, overwhelmed, or overtired, she turns her head to the right and spits on the floor, like a continuous 6-inch long saliva snail. My kid is about to be 3, and for the last 4 months or more, he's been using the toilet absolutely fine. Now, all of a sudden, he poops in the garden. He likes the moon to see his bum plums. His words, not mine. I have a 22-month-old boy, and he's obsessed with plucking the hair out of all of his teddies and any toys that have hair, to the point that the seams tear open. He'll then cram as much of it as humanly possible up his nose. I have no idea where he got this from, and it's worrying that it'll get stuck one time. We've binned all furry teddies since, but any chance he gets, he'll try to pluck carpets, rugs, and even blankets. The boy is a nutcase. Anytime anybody farts, my 3-year-old blames me, even when I'm not even in the same building as him. My 2-year-old sucks juice out of his beaker and spits it on the carpet, then tries to suck it back up. It's really gross. I don't know why he does it, and it's really hard to stop him because, dehydration. It's a work in progress. Not my child, but my 11-year-old sister is obsessed with Halo. She's never played it, but loves everything about it. She knows more about it than me. Apparently, Master Chief's name is John. Who knew? If she finds some sort of Halo-related item in a store, she'll buy it and document the opening process by recording it. If she doesn't have the money to buy it, she'll document the find by, of course, recording it. It's not that bad. I find it cute. She also draws a really good Master Chief. She has around 200 plus drawings somewhere. She doesn't draw him to exact detail, kinda adds her own little flair. Also draws those little pet shop toys as Marines. I don't know, she's weird. My 7-year-old son is obsessed with Michael Jackson, specifically Smooth Criminal. He loves Minecraft and Five Nights at Freddy's too, but the MJ thing is borderline disturbing. He had a Michael Jackson birthday party, records videos of himself dancing in costume to Smooth Criminal, has several movies, CDs, a video game, an action figure, several costumes, and can tell you exactly what vitiligo is. He has all of these things because I choose to enthusiastically endorse pretty much anything he does. And I figure the fastest way for something to lose its sparkle is for the parents to think it's cool. Other than people thinking it's strange, his obsession has only caused public awkwardness once. We were out to dinner and there was another family in the restaurant that included 3 teenage sons with huge, luxurious afros. The parents were interracial and my son was open-mouthed gawking at them. The restaurant was a buffet, so there were several passes back and forth by us. And at one point, he whispers to me, "Mom, they look like the Jackson 5. I love their hair." He genuinely admired them and innocently wanted to look at them. But we live in Southeast Texas, so I'm sure they're used to getting gawked at in public for less pleasant reasons. He's too young to understand about the allegations against Michael, and he just thinks most people think MJ was a little strange and made up not nice stories about him because he was famous.
Cashiers, what's been the most interesting reaction you've experienced when someone's gotten their card declined? Not necessarily a bad customer behavior story, but one that I'll share anyway. I was a cashier at a chain hardware store, the big orange one. A mom, dad, and a few kids, all in ill-fitting clothes, but pleasant as all get out, come up to the register and look like they're having a rough day. They have 3 carts full of merchandise, all basic stuff. One of everything you would need if you were moving out or starting from scratch. Toilet paper, cleaning supplies, mop, broom, light bulbs, carts full of just everything you can imagine. I ask, "You guys moving to a new place?" The mother says, "Actually, our house burned down." I apologize for their circumstances and continue to ring up their items. The total ends up over $1,000. I run their card and it's declined. At this particular department store, you're allowed to discount a total up to $50 without manager approval. So I do that and it's still declined. The parents look like they're at their complete breaking point but are taking it so gracefully for a family with 3 kids who just lost everything. The mom tears up and starts calmly making decisions about what to put back. I asked them to hang tight, pulled the manager aside and explained the situation. The manager and I walked back to the family and they are still eliminating things. And my manager took 50% of the entire transaction, then added a 10% senior discount and a 10% military discount on top of everything. The card then worked and they were incredibly grateful and nearly in tears as I bagged everything up. I'll never forget how awesome that manager was. I didn't even really have to explain anything after I said, "So their house burnt down?" And she immediately jumped into action to show some compassion. My good old story about human kindness and compassion. Well, ain't that just peachy now? I was working at a mega bookstore. A man came up with 2 or 3 serious philosophy books. Then he flicked his credit card at me. Don't do that to a cashier. Just don't. I said nothing and swiped his card. It declined. The screen asked me to call Amex. I tell the customer I have to call. He hisses at me not to say it so loud. I had a phone with me, so I made the call right there standing at the register. Amex tells me to confiscate the card, if you believe you can do that. So I say, sorry, they tell me I have to take your card. He screams, my mother is a crunt minus the R. She cut me off. I cut the card in half. I still feel good about that day. Literally cannot stand that attitude. This person sounded like they were just a little jerk, so I don't blame their mum for cutting them off. The fact of the matter is, people, your parents may have brought you into this world, but that doesn't mean they have to be responsible for you forever. I've talked about it before, but personal responsibility is just something that you have to accept eventually when it comes to living your life and being responsible for yourself and the way that you behave and treat other people. We see a fairly clever smoke and mirrors routine at my liquor store. Customer comes in, walks to the spirits hard liquor section and puts 1 bottle under their shirt while packing up a second and walking back to the register with it. They attempt to buy the second bottle with a card that they know will decline. Then they say they have to call their bank and dial a number as they leave. Misdirection works. These goddamn alcoholic criminals can learn misdirection and deception, but they can't learn the 12 steps. Cashier at a drive-thru. I took his card at the first window, told him it was declined. He says, all right, I'll just go, I guess. He pulls up to the next window, demands his food, then slams on the gas, pulling away, almost crashing into another car. That boy wanted his Wendy's. If you are ever hungry enough to steal, get fruits and vegetables and things. I remember I was in America fairly recently in LA and I met this homeless guy. At least I assume he was homeless because he was pretty dirty and preaching the word of God. Anyway, I decided to buy this guy some food at like a bodega or something. He's picking out cereal packets and everything. And I say to him, oi, take a banana. And he's like, what? No, I don't want a banana. I'm like, take a goddamn banana. It's full of potassium. It's good for you. Like seriously, if you're going to steal food, get something that is wholesale good for you, not goddamn Wendy's or McDonald's or something like that, I swear. I had this one lady who just kept making me rescan it over and over and over again until eventually my manager had to shoo her away. She was clearly desperate, but I worked at a store where nothing we sold was necessary for daily life. Literally nothing, so I didn't have much sympathy. Liquor store? No, we had like ugly fake plants and furniture and random decorative things. I'd be sympathetic for alcohol. That was multiple comments on the same thing, but I felt like it was necessary for the context, and yeah, I wouldn't be that sympathetic about that either. I was at a fairly uncrowded Walmart in a nice neighborhood at about 11 p.m. and my card didn't get declined, but there was something strangely wrong with it. It was the only form of payment I had. The cashier kept trying to punch in numbers and doing all sorts of computer stuff, and he needed to see my driver's license for some reason. It was taking forever, and I became overwhelmed with paranoia that it was a Jason Bourne type situation, that I swiped my card and an alert came up on the screen with a big red X and a code that meant he needed to stall as long as possible until men in suits could surround the building and I could be apprehended. I was sweating bullets and thought about running, but then it finally went through and I could take my milk and Reese's home. My man out here buying some Reese's Pieces and he thinks he's gonna get Jason Bourne. My God, buddy, I need to tell you something. It's okay, but you are not the one. Mostly it's just, oh no, that should definitely go through. Try it again. Fails. Let me check the bank. Calls and moans at the bank for a bit. Now try. Works. Now that I think about it, my card has never been definitively declined. I've had times where the tap doesn't work or it's like, you're suddenly spending a lot of money. Is this actually you doing this? Yes, it is. Okay, and then it works again. I had one lady who screamed and accused me of purposely making her card decline to embarrass her, as if a 16-year-old making minimum wage somehow could manage that or would have any reason to do that to a stranger. I don't doubt that, but teenagers can be excessively cruel. Back in the 90s, I worked for Rumblos. Had a guy pick out a new TV and VCR, wanted warranty. Nice easy sale. Trouble is, I noticed the signatures were a bit different, and in those days, anything over £100 you had to phone through for authorization. So I did, and the card was stolen. Lady at the other end of the phone said I was as much as possible supposed to hold the line and keep the customer in the store as the police police had been called. So I say to the guy, sorry, it seems their system is playing up, so it's going to take a while for the authorization to come through. He seems fine with it. Waited and waited what must have been 20 minutes, and another customer said, you know what, mate, you're making it look like he's stolen that card. I told him that I was just told to wait for the authorization code and that would take a while, because their system, yada yada yada. Card bearer pegged it out of the shop. I could now explain to the Good Samaritan that the card was stolen and in the nicest way possible that he was a butt and he should keep his thoughts to himself. Got paid £50 for the card, handed it to the police who turned up about 5 minutes after he'd bailed, told them what he was wearing, but he was long gone. Wow, both those men were tossers in the end. Several years ago, the day after Christmas at Target, a woman has 3 carts full of marked down Christmas merchandise. My scanner was broken, so I had to hand type each UPS code in by hand. Needless to say, it took a while. The customer snottily complains about how much I was inconveniencing her by taking so long. Finally finished ringing up her purchases, and she hands me a card. Declined. She had me run it again. Declined. Again. Sighing outrageously, she pulls out her wallet and flips it open. I swear the woman had like 20 credit cards. She starts wiggling her fingers over them like she's picking a tarot card. Hands a new card to me. Declined. Another card. Declined. Has me try several cards more. All declined. Finally, super frustrated, she writes me a check. In mounting glee, I tell her it's declined also. She slams her front card away and stomps out the exit. Lady behind her asks if her items are up for grabs. I say, yep, and proceed to watch as a horde of people ravage the contents of the carts. It was awesome, like watching sharks eat chum. I still think people are generally better off without credit cards because some people just can't be trusted. I had a customer that was yelling in multiple languages in my lobby demanding a refund onto his gift card. We had already made his drinks, but he said it took too long. Smoothie shop, midsummer. It's going to take a bit as always. The guy wouldn't stop yelling, was trying to take other customers' smoothies to replace his, even though his were in his hands, all good. After trying to convince him that I absolutely cannot give him a refund on the gift card without the actual gift card and number, he finally walked up to the register, deliberately knocking over 2 stanchions with the guided rope between them, then proceeded to flick the 2 gift cards at me, both missing and going over my shoulder. The craziest part is in the end, he actually didn't pay on the gift cards. He paid in cash. Wanted the smoothies refunds put on these non-reloadable gift cards, but also to keep the smoothie. At that point, I went to hand him back the cards. He dropped his smoothie, one was mostly gone, and kept the other, and just walked out the door, leaving $50 in gift cards. Utterly astounding interaction. Yes, I agree. What an ignoramus. I had a lady break down and start crying. While she was in the line, she already looked like her world was falling apart. I don't remember what it was she brought, but I don't think it was more than $30, and the guy behind her offered to pay for it. More crying ensued. You know, I'm sure most people would feel sympathetic to this crying woman, but I bet there's someone out there, a Squidward of a human being, who's just like, okay, lady, let's keep the line moving. We've already established you can't afford it. Go on, leave. That'd be awful. But even then, as cruel as that might seem, it's not even the wrong response to have to it. I was moving from Tennessee back home to Ohio. I had my entire life in my car and it got towed in the college town I made a stop in to have lunch with a friend. I had $100 to get home, costing me $120 to get my car out. My friend covered the $20, but I only had a half a tank of gas to get home. Was counting change at the gas station I stopped at. Needed about $10 to get home, I believe, and started crying and having a panic attack. Went to the bathroom and came back. The cashier told me the guys behind me filled up my tank and to have a safe trip home. More crying, and it was just a really good feeling to know there are decent human beings in the world. Well, if I had an interaction that sweet on my travels back home, I'd be singing all the goddamn way. Just the other day, I had a lady whose card got declined. Her response was to try it about 6 more times, then it hit her. She forgot to take her card out of her pocket, and long story short, she managed to demagnetize her card. Her solution was to run home and grab cash, which wouldn't have been a big deal, except she ran her food stamp card first, and the register physically will not let me do anything except finish tendering. So I had to cash her out, return the non-food items, hold them until she got back, and re-ring them. And yes, she spent a good 5 minutes ranting about how I was conspiring against her until she figured out what had happened. Because a lot of people are asking, I couldn't key in her card number manually because I have to have the card in my hand to do it, and the customer refused to give it to me. All the while, this woman is accusing this person. She's picturing that if she accuses them enough, he's going to turn around and go, "Kunna dioda!" On the receiving end, I was working in construction pretty far from home, and for lunch I went to get an $8 custom sandwich from a fancy grocery store. At the register, my card got declined, and when it did, I immediately checked my phone and saw I had a zero balance. I told the lady, sorry, I can't pay for this, and she said, wait, hold on, and called a few people over, and she ended up paying it for me. I still remember her face. I tried to pay her back after my next payday, but she said, no, I don't want it. I like to help, and I imagine no other people will do the same. I will never forget her. She turned what would have been a depressing day into something I will never forget. I was told to be quiet and polite when explaining that a card wasn't working, so when the transaction was declined, I tried to keep my voice down. Older gentleman with family asked me to speak up. He still couldn't hear me. His family laughed and said something like, you daft bugger, the card's been declined. He laughed and said he used the wrong card. Fortunately, the other one worked. At least it was a positive reaction. Uneventful. All I have to say is, English? I don't know how it is now, but 20 plus years ago when I worked as a cashier, if we called in for a manual verify, the only thing we ever said was a code X decline. We were never told what the codes meant, but apparently one of them was a tip-off to the verifying team to send the police. I found that out when I had one that was taking an extremely long time to go through, kept asking all sorts of stuff like confirming our address and systemic delays. When the popo showed up, I knew what was going on. Phoning in for authorization was handy. In the 90s, I had a couple young guys come into our music store. My aunt says I can buy a DJ setup as a graduation present. He proceeds to show me this handwritten note on a napkin. I allow my nephew to buy a DJ setup as a graduation present. Naturally, he starts picking out the best of everything. Or when there were two great items, each with a slightly different advantage, he took both. The buddy had some stuff thrown in for himself as well. Full PA system, stands, cables, mics, the controller, the pile gets deep. So I run the card in the imprinter, make the call, actually to the police, while an employee distracts him with information on certain pieces. I hung up and told him for the high amount they had to call me back with the authorization number. It is typical, should be 5 minutes. Cops showed up, the kids turned white, they get escorted outside. Turns out they were out swimming at a local beach and stole the credit card from a lady's purse. I'm just gonna say, screw them kids. Like, it's one thing to steal physical money from someone, but to attempt to accrue massive credit card debt on someone else's card, that's just scummy. I know that the banks usually reimburse you if you get found being a victim of fraud, but they deserve a swift kick in the nether regions. I was 16 years old, working for minimum wage at the Jesus Chicken restaurant. A guy and his daughter came in and she was in a gymnastics uniform. They order and she starts telling me all excited about how every time she has an out-of-town competition, they try the local chicken chain together. Their total was only $16, but his card got declined. He pulled out a second, but it declined too. She looks disappointed and he tells me to cancel the order. But it was only $16, so I run to the back and grab my own card and run it through. They get their food and he lingers behind to thank me and tells me that he's going through a divorce and they probably wouldn't have gotten to continue their tradition if I hadn't stepped in. I felt good doing that for someone without expecting anything in return, but to my surprise, right at closing that night, my manager comes to the back and says someone is asking for me. The guy came back and gave me $30 and thanked me for making his daughter's day. Since a lot of people seem to have questions about the money and/or validity of this event, I'd like to address them. My card was a debit, not credit. Don't know why that matters. When the guy came back at closing to give me the money, he had plenty of cash on him. My guess is he had it back at his hotel. He thanked me for making his daughter's day because he'd been going through a rough divorce and his soon-to-be ex had most likely cancelled his cards and had been pulling stunts like that a lot, hence the backup stash of cash. I paid for the food instead of having them come back because my parents had been talking about paying things forward in our family and I wanted to do something nice for someone besides it was only $16. Jesus Chicken is Chick-fil-A. Yeah, I admittedly just wanted to know if Jesus Chicken was a real place, so I'm glad they answered that. I'm disappointed though. Not me, but an elderly lady in front of me at a Walgreens. She had mostly food items when her card declined. She was gracious and simply pulled a couple items aside. It went through, but I saw that the items were nuts and jerky. You know, protein sources. And I started imagining her being on a fixed income and being malnourished, so I paid for them myself and then found her in the parking lot and said, "Ma'am, excuse me, but I think you left this behind," and handed her the bag. I walked away quickly before she could say anything. I have another story about how I bought a guy a Slurpee at a 7-Eleven because his card declined for something that literally costs a couple bucks and my heart broke for him. I figure this is my neighborhood, these are my neighbors. I know what it's like to be broke as all get out. If I can spare a couple of dollars, then why not?
Ooh, you big softy.
I bought a girl that was crying a ticket to a big music festival after hearing her out. She'd been conned and lost €300. It would have been her 5th time and all her friends were already inside, but her ticket was declined. I still remembered the times that I needed to plan stuff like that in advance and save up. So I told her to hold on, made a few calls and told her to hang on, and tell me a bit about what she was looking forward to keep her from stressing out, telling her over and over that it was going to be okay. 15 minutes later, I got a call and a text with a scannable ticket. Walked in with her, brought her €100 worth of coupons, gave her a hug, and left. Now, my country is pretty small, but this was 300 kilometers away from home. I just felt like doing something nice and didn't want her to think that there was anything more to it. Almost 5 months later, she ended up finding me at my store. We talked, I thought she was cute, nothing more happened for another 6 months. A week before the festival, she showed up again. She'd moved to a city a few kilometers away from me for uni, so we lived within minutes of each other now. Went to the festival together and had fun. I fell for her badly. Asked her to go on a date with me while we were both high, ended up taking her to the fanciest restaurant at the festival. Had amazing food. Got pretty drunk later, and that's how I met my girlfriend. Definitely better than most stories, and it's not the first time being nice has paid off, but it's not why I help others. It's only 9 days until the festival, and I want to tell this story to someone. I might ask her to marry me. I'm a wreck right now. Haven't slept in 2 days. Just needed to tell someone. Sorry if it bothered you. I don't know why your story would bother anyone unless they're a petty, jealous, loveless little goblin man. My only thought is, while I am fairly generous, I would never spend that much money on a stranger. This happened to me and I was mortified. In my defense, it wasn't declined due to lack of funds or available credit. I went to Nordstrom's or Macy's to pick up a few items for a holiday. I think the item in question was a purse for my mom. It wasn't expensive, but it wasn't cheap either, like $250 to $300. I had placed the order online for pickup in store. Walk in, talk to the lady, get item, and go to the register. We tried to run my card, bam, declined. What? She runs it a few more times and still declined. I'm confused and a little embarrassed at this point. I call my bank, Wells Fargo, and ask them what is going on and why can't they push through the charge. They claimed the one I had expired. I read the expiration back to them and told them it was perfectly fine. It wasn't until later that the real story came out. Apparently, they detected fraud somewhere in my account, but no actual charge fraud, and decided to cancel my card and issue a new one. They did so without notifying me. They also said since it was a fraud hold, they couldn't push this transaction through, not even a one-time exception. I had to sullenly tell the teller that I would be back tomorrow. It was close to closing time for them. She gave me this look like I wasn't going to be back. That probably hurt the most. I went back the next day and bought the crap out of that purse. You go, girl. You buy that purse. You live your best life. You show that judgy teller. Not declined, but a card machine not working at Subway. Just happened a week ago. Walked into Subway, they had a big sign on the door, cash only, card machine malfunction. I, of course, didn't notice as I was on my phone. Ordered my sub and had an issue as I had no cash. So I went to the ATM down the street, got money, and ate my sub, no issue. Another guy walks in and the same thing happens to him. He also decides to go to the ATM down the street, only his card gets declined. He says it's because he was out of state and his bank wouldn't allow it. So he comes back to tell the lady, and she's really sorry. He gets really angry and walks out the door yelling, "Next time make the sign a little bigger so I don't waste all my effing time. Thanks a lot." I'm sure some people have had worse reactions to things like that, but I couldn't help but laugh. Yes, the sign could have been a little bit bigger, but when I walked back in after going to the ATM, I realized the sign was pretty damn decently sized. Could the cashier have asked each customer beforehand? Yeah, she started doing that after this guy was a butthole, but really, is it her fault that he wasn't paying attention? Luckily, I never come across this issue because I insist upon carrying at least a bit of cash around on me. And establishments that decide that they only take debit and credit card are frickin' moronic.
Who's that guy or that girl from your office, and what did they do to earn that title? I'll start. I used to work inside sales at an HVAC company just outside of Toronto. There was a guy there named Stan. Stan was money. Stan tried so hard to be social, but didn't quite know what he was doing, which often led to hilarity. Here are a few examples of Stan being Stan. Upon learning a coworker was Polish, he said, "You're a Polak?" Then told her every anti-Polish joke he knew. He genuinely thought she would find it funny, and he was laughing the whole time. After not getting a promotion after his review, since there were no positions for him to move into, nor was he anywhere near qualified, he created a petition to have our sales manager fired, and went around to everyone in each department and asked them to sign it. Nobody signed it except for him. My personal favorite was at a company barbecue. Stan and one of the guys from shipping decided to do mushrooms. The barbecue was at the president of the company's house, so this was wildly inappropriate. After about 45 minutes, he was going around from person to person shouting, "Go G-Men!" to the guys. He was a New York Giants fan and the season had just started, and asked the girls to dance with him. He then told a racist joke to the 65-year-old VP and laughed so hard at his own joke that he started drooling. I miss that guy sometimes. He made work a lot more interesting. A guy at my work, let's call him Roger, claimed that you can get high-octane racing fuel by mixing 89 octane and 93 octane in your gas tank. Roger told me on my first day here 7 years ago that if I wanted to know any good Asian massage parlors nearby, he'd recommend the good ones with the happy endings. First day at work. He used to watch webcam girls from the Philippines on his desktop at work, stripping, doing other unsavory things, etc. Then he went over and married one and now she lives here. She's half his age and probably less than half his size. He took a Filipino coworker to see his buddy's band at a local bar. Turns out it was a biker bar, frequented by a lot of some kind of Aryan Nation-style bikers. The coworker told me that there were signs up extolling the virtues of white supremacy, and that everyone was glaring at him the entire time he was in the bar. When he went to point it out, Roger just laughed and said, "I come here all the time, it's no big deal." Roger snores through meetings. Roger at one time had some kind of narcolepsy or something, and would fall asleep in his cube. Coworkers frequently threw things at him to wake him up. The weird thing is, he's actually a pretty nice guy. If you got arrested or something and called him at 3 a.m. to come bail you out, he'd do it, even if he'd only met you once for like 10 minutes. He's very friendly and sociable. He's just really strange. I used to work with Brian, about 230 pounds of pure software geek. He had a full beard like Grizzly Adams. Baths and showers were not on his list of important things to do. Once, we flew him to the client site to help solve a pesky problem. I reminded him to dress for the occasion. I greeted him at the front lobby and was shocked to see him with a collared shirt that had never been ironed and his tie tied directly to his neck. Not under the collar, just wrapped around his neck. When I mentioned it to him, he said, "If that's my only problem, then we're in good shape." A direct quote from my colleague. I woke up on an old mattress next to my boyfriend's brother in an abandoned church wearing a bikini in Tuscaloosa. And that was the first time I'd ever done Xanax. She also brought a pink briefcase full of adult toys to work at a law firm because she had an adult toy party to host later in the evening. She lived in a house that didn't have a kitchen. She has 2 pet squirrels and her husband plays in an awful nu metal band. She also crushes up pills on her desk with her keys and snorts them when she thinks no one's looking. We have a one-upper at work who is a gold mine. I can only recall his most recent outlandish claims, which were that he's been in 19 weddings this year, not attended, but been in, and that he had an overweight friend on the top floor of the World Trade Center on 9/11 who made it down to safety and now runs 15 miles a day. I was working in an open concept office where we used an instant messenger to communicate. One day, working late, it's only myself and that guy. He disappeared for like 20 minutes and then came back, but I didn't notice much. He types to me, "Hey, do you like my haircut?" And I look over and he's just locked eyes with me after shaving his head with a razor in the bathroom. I used to work with a guy who was an excellent engineer, but frequently subject to fits of rage when things didn't go well with what he was working on. Picture the scene. Typical cubicle farm with engineers hard at work and the only sound you hear is the sound of tapping on keyboards. Suddenly, the sound of hysterical angry cursing and someone slamming their keyboard on the desk repeatedly. Everyone leaps to their feet in alarm like a bunch of prairie dogs scanning the room for the source of the noise. Almost at once, everyone realizes that it's just Tim having another tantrum, smiles at each other, and quietly sits back down. Later, our secretary walks over to his office with a new keyboard, puts it on his desk without a word, and then walks back. A woman at my company has decided instead of paying off her student loans, she'll simply get more degrees. She's 40 plus on her 4th master's degree and does nothing but complain about schoolwork all day. Probably at least $100K in debt. No comprendo. That guy at my current company is John. John is a conspiracy theorist. He believes that the anti-theft RFID things at the doors of Walmart are designed to scan your credit cards and the metal strip in money in your wallet to see how much money you have to spend. John talks about secret CIA trains that run in tunnels under the city. John used to work for a cell phone company and tells us stories of how he installed scanners on light poles on nearly every major road to scan for a unique identifier that all vehicles emit for government tracking purposes. John believes the building we work in has chemicals applied to the HVAC system, which is making us more compliant with government programs. John will never use his ATM card to buy meals because he doesn't want the government to track what he eats. John calls a $20 bill a yuppie meal coupon. I actually thought that one was funny. Ice cream is called whipped lard. Eating at Panda Express is eating an endangered species meal. John once told me about his collection of different sized rubber gloves he has at home. He has a pair that go up to his shoulders for cleaning the bathroom. John also believed that all major leaders of the world belong to the same family tree. Also, our building has anti-earthquake devices attached to it, so the building shakes gently every so often. John claimed that the shakes were the CIA shooting mind control beams up from their underground trains. John believes our secretary at the front desk keeps a log of when John entered and left the building. Most days, John would ride the train to work, and every so often he would say, "Better stay indoors, they're spraying again." Spraying mind control drugs, that is. Sadly, John quit a few months ago. On the day he quit, he sat in his car in the parking garage for 4 hours before he worked up the guts to call his boss on the phone and quit. He instructed that his desk be boxed up and sent to his home. No one has heard from John since. My good friend Paul works in the warehouse at our company. He's gotten into every sort of trouble imaginable. He tipped a towering stack of construction materials over the back of our yard's wall. He slammed the forklift into one of our delivery trucks when he dozed off. He's gone to the wrong construction site 100 miles away from the intended delivery site. But he's a genuinely good-hearted guy, and the company's had mercy on him. He's still with us. Tons of funny stories always coming out of the warehouse from this guy. My personal favorite? Paul's an Iron Maiden fan, and he's always singing while he works. Well, one day, Paul decides to sing a parody version of Caught Somewhere in Time, with the clever lyrics of Caught with Shaft in Hand. So he's just belting out these inappropriate lyrics as he moseys over towards the will call counter. Who should walk in but one of the sales directors giving a tour of the warehouse to a new female salesperson. Paul rounds the corner, continuing the chorus with "Caught with shaft in hand," and bumps directly into the sales director. He plays it off like nothing happened, shakes his hand and the hand of the new employee, who were both giving him odd looks. To add to the hilarity, when they finally depart, we notice his fly's been down the entire time. I'm not even sure where to start. We have that family working in our warehouse. It's a mother and her son and daughter. The son was recently fired for reasons that I'll get to in a moment. They're as trashy as you can possibly be. Think of all the stereotypes and you'll have thought of them. So here's the laundry list. The mother, married to a guy that has dementia and 13 stents in his heart. They filed medical bankruptcy 3 times. Most recently, her husband tried to end himself but ended up only shooting himself in the shoulder. She always wears t-shirts with sayings that she thinks are clever. To really put the icing on the trash cake, she smokes Pall Malls. She and her children commute to work together, but every month their car gets repossessed, so they end up getting a new crappy vehicle. No one is sure how they pull that off. What, with all the bankruptcies and other bad credit issues? She watches every reality show and wants to talk about them with anyone who will listen, and doesn't understand when you tell her that you don't watch whatever it is she's talking about. So You Think You Can Dance is a prime example. The daughter. She smoked through all 4 of her pregnancies, claiming that her mother smoked when she was pregnant with her and she turned out fine. She lives in a trailer but gets peeved if you call it a trailer because it's on a permanent foundation. She also has a Tourette's type head twitch and blinking thing going on. She has no neck, just a head that suddenly becomes shoulders. She's constantly broke, but spends every available penny on sending her 2 daughters to beauty pageants, and then makes everyone in the company look at the pageant photos. Surprisingly, they've actually won a few. I would hate to see what the rest of the competition look like. We know she has some sort of psychosis because she has to be medicated at all times. If not, she sees and hears things that aren't there. This has led to her hiding under her desk screaming and crying. She also has some other medical condition that causes her to always be on her period. We know this because she makes us uncomfortable by talking about it all the time. Once her husband showed up at our office, and while he was waiting for her, he told us that if he had known how crazy she was, he never would have married her, let alone had kids. To boot, she has 4 wiener dogs, one of which she claims is an attack dog that actually fended off a burglar. It was a very elaborate story that ended with a wiener dog launching himself off of the couch and into the burglar's face, drawing blood. No one was apprehended, so if you see anyone with the telltale signs of a weenie dog attack, please notify the authorities. The son. He always has the worst gas known to man. He was inside of a shipping container unloading products with some of our other employees when he kept farting, which ultimately made all of them throw up. It was ghastly. While talking to him one day, he stuck his hand down the back of his pants and said, "Watch this." He then stuck his finger under his mom's nose and told her to sniff. He'd apparently stuck his finger in his butt because his mom threw up. He then repeated the process with his sister before she could be warned. He had to miss a month of work due to a riding lawnmower explosion. He claimed he had been blowed up. He lives in a trailer on his mom's property, but doesn't have electricity, so they just run extension cords from her trailer. He had a boil on his arm that was believed to be a staph infection, and his mother lanced it with a box cutter. It was disgusting. He had a bad habit of wrecking our forklift, and one day drove it off the loading dock. The forks went into the asphalt about 10 inches, and we had to get a special wrecker to come pull it out. A short time after that, he backed into one of the support beams in the warehouse, knocking it completely out from under the roof. The beam was at least 30 feet long, and it's amazing that no one was injured. Sometimes I would find him sleeping hidden behind pallets in our warehouse during work hours. Eventually, his sister ratted him out for being drunk on the job all the time, which explained all the forklift mishaps. When confronted by his mother about the drinking, he went crazy and tried to beat her and his sister with a baseball bat. Other employees intervened and we called the cops. He took off on foot and was apprehended later that day, vowing to get even with all of us for calling the cops. His mom didn't want us to tell them, but whatever. He was wielding a bat. Needless to say, he doesn't work here anymore. There's so much more, but those are just some of the highlights that I can think of off the top of my head. We'll call my coworker from a few years ago Ed. Ed was a British man living in the US. He had pictures of the Bush family as well as a picture of the Queen in his cubicle. He was also a bodybuilder and ate a strict diet of small meats numerous times a day. He had a lot of food pre-made and delivered to him, and he'd bring it into work. It was very common to see Ed eating, and none of us really cared since we knew it was part of his overall workout regimen. He'd often microwave single potatoes, snacks, leftovers, etc. But then there was that day Ed didn't know his fish had spoiled, and he threw it into the microwave. The office smelled horrible for the rest of the day. There was also that one time he came over to my desk with a bleeding face. He said he'd nicked himself while shaving and asked me to clean him up and bandage him. He brought alcohol, prep pads, and ointment and a band-aid. He also told me that once he wanted to have my babies, which was confusing because he was gay. I tolerated all of this because I was lonely and had a crush on him that I didn't understand and never admitted until now. There's this one guy who seems nice, but he's really quiet. He basically sits on his computer all day and browses Reddit. Whenever he's given a project, he does it quickly and goes right back to browsing. He probably thinks that we don't realize or care that he hardly does any real work. But believe me, we all know. Our guy only recently got fired. One of the conclusions we had eventually reached about him was that he was completely incapable of feeling empathy, which is not really the best person to have as your main customer support representative. But that was what he'd been hired to be. He was mostly frightening in that position because he never stopped smiling or being cheerful, even if the customer was freaking out at him or if he was bored out of his mind. This in itself doesn't cause for alarm, but he was a strange dude. On his second week in the office, he found out that there weren't any dentists that provide ozone therapists in our city. So he took 2 days off and drove to a nearby city in order to get his teeth ozoned. He would ask, "How was your weekend?" in the most interested voice you could imagine. Inflection perfect with Tobias Funke asking, "How are you?" You could tell him, sure, with him exploding into laughter at every event that happened, no matter what it was. If you asked him how his weekend was, he would be extremely sure it was a great weekend, but then wouldn't be able to recall exactly what he did, ever. After a month of working there, he started complaining that our insurance company, which he wouldn't receive benefits for until he had been there for 3 months, didn't cover his ozone therapy. He kept a steamer crockpot thing in the break room and steamed a mixture of carrots and spinach every single morning, which he would then eat out of a bowl at around 10 a.m. The smell was atrocious, and everyone complained about it the first day he did it, until we found out someone was making that horrible smell on purpose. He called it borscht for unknown reasons, which our Russian salesman nearly flipped out over every time the word came up. He was kind of an idiot when it came to support as well. We have a support ticket system that handles all of our clients for all of the different services we offer. He actually had copy pasta that he was putting into every single ticket with a lot of idiotic troubleshooting steps that didn't apply to 75% of our clientele. When someone called in to report our support center was down, he asked them to submit a support ticket about it. He was overall a bit of a know-it-all, being very good at selling clients things that they didn't need and would later complain they spent thousands of dollars on. By the time he was fired, clients would call in and immediately ask to be forwarded to sales, even for stupid support issues, just so they wouldn't have to talk to him. Not as bad as some people's that guy, but by the time he was fired, everyone in the office was being driven up the wall. Our number of support tickets submitted this past month are at 50% of what they were at last year, after a steady increase for the rest of the year, and I'm fairly certain it's his fault. I will say this, don't discount that guy too quickly. An old friend of mine used to share stories about a coworker that would always say and do wildly inappropriate things, much along the lines of the original poster's examples, and including picking food off of said friend's plate in the break room, uninvited of course. My friend was nice to the guy anyway, despite the annoyances, and considered him a friend. Anyway, long story short, my friend died suddenly one day after he'd quit his job with that guy a while back. The guy was on his Facebook friends and ended up producing quite an outpouring of feelings and sympathy with the family and friends of the deceased. He would note every time he drove by my friend's old house or anything, and not obnoxiously, but in a very genuine and caring way. He was very kind and supportive to all of us that were grieving. He obviously was a very caring and very friendly individual, just totally socially inept. The moral of the story? Some of those guys are just totally weird, but some are actually really nice people that just don't know how to interact well. Give them a chance and you might make an invaluable friend for life. This guy was far more loyal than the trite normal people my friend had worked with, some of which made brief and non-sentimental remarks on his death. That guy seemed to be the only one that was really truly affected by this. Oh man. Last year, I worked with the most intense guy ever. He was ex-military going back to school for his 3rd undergrad or something. On one particular day while we were listening to NPR, a story came on about someone getting shot during a home robbery. Apparently in South Dakota, there's a law which states if someone breaks into your house, you can shoot them dead and not go to jail. I simply stated that I don't think I would be able to kill a person. And he screams in my face, covering me with spittle, "But it's your right!" It became kind of a meme for the other interns. In another instance, he went on a rage to me about how dumb women are, and I'm a woman, and that their only purposes are for breeding and feeding. I got peeved, slam on the brakes, kick him out of the truck, and tell him he's in timeout and I'll be back when he's not going to be a jerk. Best memory ever. Made even better since we were on an Indian reservation and he was not very fond of natives. There's a man at the grocery store I work at. We'll call him Monty because that's his name. I hate this man. He embodies everything that is wrong with society and fills so many stereotypes it isn't even funny. He's from New Jersey. Therefore, in his mind, he must be a mobster. He acts this way all the time. To everyone. Heavy Brooklyn accent, even though he's never been to New York, self-admittedly. Unnecessarily argumentative and overly confrontational about anything. He acts like people asking him to do things like his job is an affront to him on par with assaulting his mother and kicking the Pope in the balls. This man is built like a 3/4 full sack of crap with thinning hair, zero charisma, and yet he still hits on the female minors we have working here. Did I mention this man is about 70 years old? When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description as well. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.